morning, everyone. Welcome to this event of this closing of Bootcamp of the Speeding of Climate Financing CFA at Colombia. We say hello to every single person who is connected to our social media and WebEx, and of course, every single potential guest is that we are here today. So, in my second cycle, which started in February this year, so we were working with this climate change as well related to the effects. And at the end of the journal today, we're going to have some experts here. It's going to be a key factor to understand the relevance that we have the implementation of this initiative in our country. So we're going to know as well the projects, the chosen projects by the climate finance, because it's an opportunity to establish objectives in the climate weather. So we hope that it's going to be enhancing related to the knowledge and the weather to establish the links as well for having the sustainable links as well. To start in order to figure out as well. Alejandro Figueroa, President of Banco Bogotá. Well, good morning, you all. I'm really proud to be part of this. Speeding is going to be a special greeting for everyone who's going to be with us today. All the representatives of the United Kingdom, as well as representative as well as friends, because we feel really proud to have you here today. As you know, the bank is completely committed with the weather change as well. So we have subscribed the first bonus related to the weather change as well. $200 million. We have the obligation to foster this kind of projects and welcome everyone. So we hope to have a great day with the presentation of the 8 winner projects. Thank you very much, Alejandro, for your words. We give the floor to Hanag, Director of Weather of the Embassy of the United Kingdom in Colombia. Okay, good morning, you all. As they say, my name is Graham Knight. I'm the director of the Cooperation Environment in the United Kingdom and Colombia. And I've been 2 years in Colombia. But I just arrived from vacation, so my body is here in Colombia, but mine is still in London. But I would like to start thanking because of the Bogota's Bank for inviting us to here to its branch. It's impressive because in fact Banco de Bogotá has been an ally, a very important ally to us. And in fact, so just 1 week ago we launched a regional chapter against the illicit trade in species within the region. Bogota's bank was the first bank in Colombia that was part of the declaration of Pokemon against the illegal species trade. So thank you very much to the president and also to the bank. Now I would like to mention that to us, for United Kingdom, the struggle against weather change is a priority, a very important priority. And to achieve this commitment, this priority, so we just like 2 years ago, we double our commitments on finance and international weather until 11 billion of pounds. And here in Colombia, for achieving this and these commitments as well, we have an alliance for growing up as well as sustainable enhancing with a political enhancing that it has like 4 years time, and under this lens we are supporting with financing technical assistance as well, and some projects to protect, like say, Amazonia, to foster a transition as well, and ambitious as well. And of course, we are financing some projects with the private sector. But why are we doing this hand by hand with the private sector? Because according to your opinion, the private sector and the finance sector as well has to play a very important role in the transition in their energy and the struggling with the weather change as well. So they can contribute some financing as well, but not to the needed scale to achieve energy transition and worldwide and to protect the natural resources like countries like Colombia they have. And about this project, I would like to mention some numbers and some things that shows us the experience from the United Kingdom in this sector. So we have here a strategy of free financing who has one of the working access and the financial sector as well, including as well for a better understanding of the weather risks. For example, a city like London is the main investment hub to contribute to the solutions of the weather crisis as well and diversity. And the United Kingdom is the first country of the Group 20 to do some applications related to the tax force as well, to the financial and disclosures as well. So we have too much experience at this sector, and the idea of this project is to contribute about this experience to Colombia, to the companies that are with us today here. So finally, to end it up, I would like to thank to the Visit Colombia CFAs because Ricardo and every single Alice because of its support and management that becoming CFA a reality in Colombia is just with their energy and dedication and vision as well that we achieve the transition, the needed transition to achieve the commitments as well and for those countries. And we're going to be to Clementine, my colleague from London, to talk a little bit more about CFA. Thank you very much. As we were saying, as Abraham said, we're going to give the floor to Clementine. Welcome, Clementine. Thank you very much, Maria. So, on behalf of the government of the United Kingdom, for me it's a pleasure to welcome you guys for this event of closing of this weather finance speeding. I'm the director of the program of CFA and the Department of the Security and the Energy as well of the United Kingdom. I would like to say some words related to the competence of the relevance of this event, as well as the program, as well as CFA's program, as well as the grant was mentioned in the speeding of the financing in Colombia is a component, it's an integral component to face the weather change as well and to achieve with its focusing to deliver and to deliver security and trust as well to the investors, showing some proposals that are very well developed and completed where we're going to be able to invest the projects and the innovator projects here today they cover like these sectors as well, which include in some sectors agriculture and manufacture as well, and energy. And they show as well that we're gonna be able to have a really just transition and inclusive as well, when there is not only helping Colombia to accomplish the objectives, the weather objectives, so but also help to assure the alliance within the country and in the future for their people, reducing the impacts of the pollution and contributing and the enhancing as well and the creation of new workspaces as well. The government of the United Kingdom is really proud to be support CFA from its beginning, and is really glad to see in order to know this strength as well program as well, and now is going to be with 9 countries: Colombia, Peru, Nigeria, Pakistan, Turkey, Mexico, and Vietnam as well. In Colombia, I see it very great as well, related to the CFA, according to its launching in 2022. We're gonna be something really interesting for 7 projects as well. And with this previous one, as you know, you're looking for to strengthen these investment proposals as well. It's really great how to are implementing some of these projects. For example, an energies and a project of the energy sector where it's gonna be about of the implementation of a minimum solar 1 megawatt every single of them in different points of the country, and savings of renewable energy to the local branches as well, contributing as well to the diminishing of the greenhouse effect gases as well, and to its energy security as well. This project participated as well in 2020 from CFA and London, when it had the opportunity to present its proposal as well, facing some international investors. I would like to thank BBC Colombia and our colleagues from the embassy as well, Bogota's bank, to organize this event. Who's gonna linked here, everyone. Thank you very much for being with us as well, and I hope these 3 days had been really great for the development of these projects as well as the investors as well. It's really important related to the financial community today. Without any further ado, we're going to give the floor to Maria. Thank you very much. We really thank Alejandro and Clementine and Brad because of their words as well. We're going to give the floor to Ana Maria for the DNP, who's going to tackle the role of DNP and the financing and weather corridor. Welcome, Ana Maria. Thank you very much. Good morning, you all. And well, I would like to start these words because I have just 15 minutes. We're going to try to do it in 10. So thank you very much for the financing accelerator and the embassy of the United Kingdom for this event and this invitation as well. Besides, also the participants or the attended, the participating in some projects from the government as well. So I would like to start this intervention as well, remembering there is going to be this 27th of July, the United Kingdom as well, the weather of the change that was ended up. So we are in the global vision as well. So it was said because of the meteorological worldwide information and Copernicus from the European Commission, who confirmed that July was the heatest season around the world. So adding that May 26th, 2023, the first newsletter of the National of the Water related to the preparation for the high probability of the occurrence of the El Niños phenomenon in 2023. So presented some results as well, the probabilistics as well. Where shown with the 84% of probability, the phenomenon of El Nino is going to present in a really wave as well with the 56%. It has the probability to evolve to a really to November and January 2024 as well. I think this is really important because we want to tell you this guy because with this news, I would like to tell you because I do believe that every single person of the frequency of the disaster has been the trouble since the 80s decade that it has as well has been related to three things. First of all, what happens is when we have any kind of injury stretch related to the information because the things are was better and with the walls and it'll be able to the exposition as well. And thirdly, because indeed there is an alteration of the temperature patterns and precipitation indeed as well due to the weather variability, which have seen that related to the potential threat of natural disasters as well. In Colombia, also from the 58,000 events in the disasters in the latest 20 years, I know the 88% is going to the meteorological events, so the extremes that we have related to water and rains or those kind of things as well. So, for example, taking that into account, I would like to talk about three things because it's the reality and the challenges that we have related to weather change as well. And secondly, is the involvement of the private sector and the financial sector as well, involving the same because of the acceleration of actions to avoid some weather change as well. So first of all, starting with this, we would like to tell you related to the reality and the things in the country as well, because most of us, we know Colombia has a national contribution, of course, which is determined to reduction of the greenhouse effects and adapting to the weather change as well, really ambitious. So we said there's going to be 2020 to reduce the 51% of the greenhouses effect and we're going to be able to work carbon neutral and resilient to the weather as well. However, let's say taking into consideration these two spectrums are related to the weather change in Colombia, we know that Colombia is not a huge issuer of greenhouse effect. But we have a reduction commitment as well, not only because we're really interested related to enhance the competitiveness of these productive sectors as well, because they go hand by hand, because this weather change is just a fact that we cannot go backwards as well. But the only thing that we're doing in a global level is to avoid the temperature of the 2 degrees. So we're not going to start making some decisions to go to zero at this moment. So we're going to have too many problems to reach that goal as well. However, our main concern in this case, and besides, also is that's why we're really because of these mitigation parts, because we're really vulnerable to the weather change. And that is due to, in a really conventional way, we suffer some variability and weather change as well because of the from of the La Nina and the El Nino in a really often way as well as we were saying. So we're trying to avoid this in this frequency and to the impacts of these events according to the weather change itself. So due to this national context that I tell you, the Bank of the Republic says that the impacts of the global warming as well, according to these current policies, they represent some losses as well, 4.3% in the GDP within the country as well. This is not rejectable because if you do a comparison, the occasion because of the pollution of the urban pollution are really related to the gases emissions with the greenhouse effects because it has a really approximately cost of 2% of the GDP yearly. So this digit could be really subestimated because certainly it's not taking into account the effects with some other weather change annexums as well. So in addition, I would like to introduce you to some digits that we have in the COPEX 4058 variability. We call that in a really briefly way. And is that in Colombia It's not only vulnerable to weather changes because of the population as well, but productive processes as well. So we have, besides the 7% of the world, of the population of the country is highly exposure, and is vulnerable to drones and slides and torrentials as well. The 39% of the fluvial of the primary is highly vulnerable as well to these phenomena, meteorologicals as well. 7,500 kilometers related to the roads because the 52% of the coast territories they have critical conditions and threat because of the coast erosion as well, without taking into account every single effect that you could have in the goods that they have near coasts. So we have a good news and a bad news as well related to the 70% is the clean energy, but from hydrological, but it's gonna be highly vulnerable from phenomena we're going to about to leave the El Nino phenomena related to the drugs that we have and those kind of things as well. Because in addition, because from seven from those nine zones is going to be high vulnerability to hydrometeorological phenomena as well. Just to tell you just why our interested in really into adaptation matters, because we're really vulnerable to the effects, and that our actions related to mitigation are not good enough because we're really aware, because we need to help in this worldwide problem. So the second point related to the private and the financial sector, I would like just to recognize something that we have clear, the development of the sustainability as well is something related to the crossing part related to the economy and environmental and social sustainable as well, the markets and the commercial objectives as well. So that's why the role that you have who are here with us today as financial intermediaries and administrators of those risks as well is really important as well to diminish these kind of things as well. So it's gonna start facing. So that's why it's really important. The Green Protocol as an agreement, really sustainability vision, we requires to integrate related to the weather change and renewable energies and sustainable transportation and bioeconomy, among some other strategical points related to the operational, institutional, and financial institutions. Due to this challenge, we're really proud to listen to the positioning of the financial place as well, related to the job and related to the world change as well. And so initiatives like the financing speeds as well, and Acelerando initiatives as well related to this if CFA as well, and some among other ones, and about our national banks. They have been developing some financial green products as well, and also the commercial banks, as we were saying as well. It has been issuing some green bonuses to develop these processes as well, and in addition to these credit finances to present this green fund facing weather as well. This good news as well, I guess, is very important to remember that weather change represents one of the worldwide crises. So, related to this environmental crisis, we know that we are facing this relevant the loss of the weather change as well, because they are completely touched as well. That's why we need the country needs to move in a really efficient and innovative way for the answers to the weather agenda, which is really ambitious, that we have been creating to seeing the digits according to our monitoring system and verification of financing and weather financing. We found that only the 9% of the investments related to the weather investments that we could track as well are coming from the private sector. That's why we do need to enhance in a really radical way the support that we are presenting from the private sector, and using, of course, methodologies, for example, the spreading of related to the TCFD as well, and to get the proper to the green taxonomy in such a way we're going to verify these investments as well. In fact, they have positive impacts and environmental ones as really necessary, because you're going to be facing to the Antioquia, San Valle, and Cundinamarca, and Atlántico as well, because we know there are huge opportunities related to some other opportunities and investments in other countries related to technology, renewable energies, and sustainable transportation as well. Because when we finance the vision within the country, means that we're going to have a huge commitment in this case, as I've been said before, because the 83% of the goals of the mitigation that we have within these CFA is going to be coming with the reinvestment in transportation, economical path as well, because working with this sector as well from the banking and from the guilds as well, because to us is really great to listen to that the portfolios of the CFA we count on some proposals to replace transportation vehicles to electrical vehicles as well, to design some mobilization transportations as well for the internal transportation with containers in the Colombian ports, and to increase the fleet of vehicles of shipments as well as zero emissions as well, to implement a pilot of electrification of the routes as well within the implementation of the framework strategical for transportation with the city of Pasto. So according to the strategies, national strategy and financing as well, that we launched some updates in December 2020 to accomplish the goals of mitigation goals related to the NCDC. In 2030, we required an investment between 8 and 14 billion pesos. And to accomplish the goals, adaptation goals between 5 and 10 billion pesos to 2030. It's really important to take into consideration that the accomplishment of these goals, or the DNC, doesn't generate zero mitigation of the greenhouse effects, and is gonna leave us really adapted as a country, which means that these digits that I'm gonna tell you is really subestimated once, because it could be higher. So, however, to implement those kind of things with the deficit of coverage of mitigation adaptation as well, even is going to enhance 7 times the investment that we have. That's why we invite you to work together on this very important process as well, in order to cover all my goals, because it could be really impossible to be like this. In order to work these exercises to avoiding some weather changes as well, and some of you already know, the DNP, we have a tool is corridor of weather financial, because it's mechanisms that maps those financial mapping things, and is connected to the main sources to give the resources as well. Through the corridor, we're looking forward to build an ecosystem who tackles the ecosystem mobilization of resources and its implementation and efficient implementation in time as well. So in addition, we have achieved with this corridor huge achievements, as well as to articulate some initiatives at the CFA as well to the vision of the national strategy of financing and weather financing as well. So one of the needs that we have identified to accelerate this financing part has to be with the low capacity that the people have and the sectors have and the territories ready to formulate some projects, because they're going to be really efficient in the usage of the resources will be and the emissions and the generation of adaptation as well. So that's why that we need to use all of the support that we have been working from the corridor to the accelerators, in order to start closing in financial places as well, and to have the relationals and the mechanisms as well, because it's the one that we're developing, because it's really interesting, really combined financing as well, to position this tool, the mass discretization with these things that contribute to the weather change, which means that there's going to be doables and financially speaking that also have presence, that they reduce some emissions, that contributes the adaptation, and it's going to be inclusive and equitative as well. So this match is going to continue working to be focused on these projects. That's why we're looking forward to figure out a strategy in order to work with these private projects as well. These advances in weather movements as well has been good because of working together as well with the United Kingdom and Colombian governments as well, because they have allows us to work in these commitments as well related to the Paris Agreement as well, and continuing with this national government in the national plans development as well under the productive transition and internationalization and weather action, specifically with the component of weather financing as a motor of engineering sustainable booth as well. So both nations we share the must feeling as well and to work articulately to too much time as well to face the weather crisis as well. So that's why I would like to congratulate the projects that here remained in the last part of the stage of this weather accelerating part as well. Thank you very much for your time and have a great time as well. Thank you very much, Ana Maria, for your words. So as follows, we receive Margarita Casas, Powers of Sustainability, and the WC, Claudia Martinez with 3, or Ecology and Economy and Ethics as well, who's going to introduce this topic.
All right, thank you very much, and I'm very glad to see you all this morning. We are deeply pleased in having you here and presenting you with the different projects that are going to be the financial closures that we're going to have in the Colombian project in such a specific moment that the whole entire planet is going through. I would like to get started by presenting you with the news that we would love to have more accelerators in the country, and especially in order to diminish the risks for the financial sector, in order to manage all the both public and private sector funds in order to finance this kind of initiatives. So that's why I'm going to present you with this. So let me get started by clarifying what the mixed financing or funding is all about. This is a core strategy in order to manage all the different funds that we have in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals. We know that the OCDE has started to talk about this, and it is pretty much born from a specific need in order to have funds coming from both the public and private sector in order to close the gaps of those SDGs that we know, and now we're using them for the climatic goals. And this is going to contribute to strengthen the financial stability of different sectors, and specifically in order to create more resilient economies. This mixed funding is looking for ways in order to have more funds that are coming from, because most of the times we have philanthropy funds, but we want to have more and more funds in order to show the intention of the private sector in order to promote the sustainable development. As you know, Dr. Figueroa said it, you need to actually diminish the risks that there might be in order to make it more viable, to make it happen. So the OCDE started with this, and they said that we needed to have this mixed funding in order to promote this kind of investment, in order to guarantee, first of all, the resources, the available resources, because we know that most of these resources have to come from the private sector. And we need to also find for the different leverages that we need to have, and we know that there are many different faults in the market, and we need to have a specific portfolio of projects, and that's the biggest challenge that is convening all of us here. So all of these funding activities in terms of this mixed funding increased up to 2018, but then with the pandemic they decreased because of obvious reasons. We know that the economy in the entire world dropped, but the good news is that it started to spike again in 2021, and that's the trend that we're going to see from now on. And we also saw all of the different goals that Colombia has. They're very ambitious. It is going to be working for the 2030 agenda, and we know that we want to increase this portfolio, so we know that this is very important, especially for the adaptation goals, that because most of the times we don't endeavor as many efforts to it, and that's why we want to work on that. And we also talked about the taxonomy of it, and I think that the Colombian taxonomy is very important in that sense. And I think we need to work on this, and we need to actually check what the investments are going to be like, and in terms of the climate funding is going to be performed. And it is also important to comply with the environmental safeguarding and to contribute with more of these SDG objectives, not to cause any meaningful harm to the environment, which is something that we have always advocated for, and to also have the minimum social safeguards. And also we need to comply with the technical criteria for in order to comply with these SDGs. And we also want to actually generate new opportunities, new social and environmental opportunities for each of the projects that we promote. So this mixed funding requires projects that are going to be impactful and that are going to be profitable. So we need to show how impactful they are going to be, and we need to measure that. And this is key because we don't know how to measure the climatic impacts. So that's why we need to actually check on that. And you cannot imagine what the huge challenge it's been so far. So that's why we need to work on the organizational capacities, and we need to also check on the specific funds that we have, and we need to prove that we have those, because most of the times we know that we want to do many things, but it's important to make sure that we do have those profiles, and we need to have some specific measurement metrics, and of course we need to guarantee transparency as well. So how do we do that? How do we make it happen? Because of course we need to be very creative in that sense. And yes, we need every single funding institutions or financial institutions and banks work on the solutions. And we need to also think about how equity could be worked around in a specific way, that we can think about it in investments, and how are we going to think the guarantees. So how are we going to work with the guarantee fund that we have in Colombia? And how are we going to have all of the different incentives in terms of the results or the outcomes? And how can we pay for that? Or how can we visualize everything that has to do with insurances? How insurance companies are going to help us out in that sense, and how they are going to provide us with a lot of support in that sense, and how we're going to cover, or we know the coverages, and we know how the dollar is changing nowadays, and we have huge risks ahead. So how can we work with that in terms of this climate funding? And how can we work with the different instruments that we've used, that we have traditionally used, and how we are going to use them better, and we can have even more. So it is important to understand what the project cycle is like, and we know that there are different stages, and we need to understand in which moment we are at. So that's why we start with the identification of the projects, then we start with the development of such, and then we have the funding and the refunding. So we need to actually think about how we're going to get to work with those instruments that we have, and how we're going to use them in a mixed way. In the first stages is initially when we start with the grants, and then we can move on to equity, debts, guarantees, and how do we do it with the whole life cycle of the project. And of course, the whole cycle, everything has to do that we start with a high risk profile, and we need to actually decrease those risks by putting together all of these financial instruments in order to see how we're going to get to work with them, and how they're going to be feasible to get to work with them in the future. And they need to get standardized, because in 10 years we need to keep on working with these kind of things, because we know that we need to tackle this climate change. So in order to do so, we need to get to work with both public and private institutions. So that's why we're here all together. And that's the advantage that we have with this climate financing accelerator, because we need to get to work together as a whole country, so we can put our efforts together, because sometimes within the banks we need to actually get to work together, so we can actually have some specific internal instruments, but we also need to work with the other banks, and then we need to work with the public sector, so we can work with these instruments, with these financial instruments, so they become more efficient. And of course, we need to decrease the risks that we have, but these risks that we have are plenty. And anytime that we assess these risks, they are going to be very careful about them. And that's why we need to actually make sure that we are going to diminish those investment risks, so we can grow in our equity. And if you want to get to know a little bit more about this, there is a funding guide or funding guidelines that is available on our website that you can actually check. And with that, I'd like to wrap up by saying that we want to manage the most important risk in order to catalyze the private investment, and that requires everybody's effort. We want to create an equities alignment so we can actually bring the investment from the private sector. In Colombia, there are very little sources of mixed funding, so we need to create those instruments. We need to design those instruments. We need to be very creative, and we need to make them available for others to invest. It is important for this specific financial ecosystem. I acknowledge all of the press and the presence that we have in this room, and also the ones that are joining us online, because what we need is cooperation rather than competition. So that's why we need to all work together towards the same objective, and we need the different stakeholders from the funding, from the financial field to get to work with this climate financing world, because we need to actually work in due diligence, and we need to actually make it happen in such a way that it's easier for all of the different project proponents. And with that, I'd like you to give it back to Margarita, to pass it over to Margarita, so she can tell us about this climate financing accelerator. Thank you very much. Okay. Well, just as Clementine said it, this project is already in 9 different countries, and here I have some important figures that will help us out to understand what the impact of this project has been like, that it's been of this project that's been funded by the United Kingdom. So far we've had 16 different calls, opening calls for these countries, and we have selected 120 projects in all of the different cycles, in all of the accelerating cycles, that amounts to $2.8 million. And within those projects, we have achieved to 12 bills that amount to $168 million. So with those figures, we can briefly understand what the impact of this climate financing accelerator has been like in these 9 countries, and of course Colombia is not the exception. And with that, we convene on different actors of this financial system, and we have tried to make all of this very interesting, both for investors, financial institutions, donors, and others. We look for ways on expanding on the different stakeholders of this ecosystem, so we can create different initiatives of funds or fundraising for these specific projects that are absolutely necessary for them to reduce these gas emissions, and so we can actually adapt ourselves a bit better, as it was said before. The main stakeholders that have been included within this program are the financial institutions. Many of them are represented by different people in this room. And of course, we have the public sector as well, because it is the one that it is the enabler, as so to speak, because it has opened up the different scenarios in order to get to work. And of course, we have the project proponents, which are pretty much the ones that we are going to be talking about today. We have 5 main objectives, just as Claudia said before. In this country, and especially by this accelerating company, we need different innovative projects, and we need to strengthening these capacities of the proponents in order to get to work in both in financial and climate impact issues. And we want to create as well some different links with the different stakeholders in this financial ecosystem, and we want to continue having this kind of debates in order to raise the awareness in terms of this very important issue. What's been the pathway so far? Well, this accelerator started back in 2017 with a specific event that was held in London that had the participation of Colombia, Mexico, and Nigeria, that actually made the participants to start with this initial project, and that's why they started working with more than 60 Colombian projects at the moment, and there was an accelerating and a specific era of acceleration was started then. Then in 2019, we established the permanent accelerating accelerator, and then it was developed for the upcoming years. This year, we have started with the second cycle, and then we're going to start with the third cycle. This evolution that we have in figures, as you know, in the previous cycle, that was from 2021, we got 83 different applications, and for this second cycle we received 144 projects, especially coming from the affordable sector, and we also have in that sense some projects coming from the energy and transport field, and the accelerator, the projects we have here, how the amount increases dramatically from last year to this year, and that is also based on the kind of projects that we're working with, and hopefully for the future ones we're going to have greater mobilization of funds. And now let us remember some of the projects coming from the first cycle. We have very interesting projects talking about, for example, public buses, public transportation, with electric, that work with electric batteries, and there was a geothermal project as well. We also talk about regenerative livestock, and we also talk about alternative fuels coming from waste, and we also have some other initiatives by solar farms, and all of them were boosted by this specific kind of funding, and some of them are actually were confidential in order to continue having the funding they need. This year, there are also very interesting projects, and briefly they are going to present us with their projects. I am not going to delve into detail because they are going to be the ones that are going to present us with their projects, but I would like to thank them in advance because of everything that they've done in this mentoring and this acceleration process, and especially this week they've done great, and thanks to the support of their organizations and those people that are representing them here, and is what we are going to see in the presentations. So these projects were mentored by experts coming from different institutions, to whom we would love to thank them for their great support. And all of this has been concluded with some specific spaces in which these experts coming from financial institutions, but also coming from public institutions, who were with us in order to actually get to listen to what we had to say and listen to what they needed help with in terms of the business model, the climatic model, and how there would be some co-beneficial, co-environmental benefits and so on. Actually, yesterday, talking to one of the proponents, they said that they found very interesting to see how many different disciplines would get to work together, because each one of them would have a different perspective in the real world, and this is what they actually needed, to have this multilateral perspective for everything they do. So that's why I'd like to thank you all for your very challenging questions that you have posed this week. Finally, I'd like to highlight some specific achievements of this CFA, and some of them have already been mentioned, but I'd like to actually go back to them, specifically talking about the articulation of the national funding strategy in terms of the climate funding, and their specific way in which we are going to get to work with different accelerators, and how we're going to get to work together in an articulated manner, and also the co-creation with different financial institutions, and also public institutions in order to achieve the climate goals of this country. We're also working in order to increase our project portfolio, and we are managing to connect those initiatives with funding, and we're also managing to have a better coverage coming from different parts of the country. So that has taken us to have a greater lessons to be learned, and of course within the ecosystems that we're working with. In terms of the challenges, as many of you have in terms of the challenges, many of you have already mentioned some of them, and it has to do with coordination in terms of the different financial institutions, investors, and donors. But also, it is important to have a greater support. Even though we have a lot of projects coming from these different sectors, we still need to have more of these projects, because we need to strengthen those projects, because we are still receiving many projects that are still very young or that are not quite mature in order to move on with them. So we need to strengthen on these capacities, and we also need to work in order to work on the innovation in terms of these climate interests. I would also like to invite you to our next operational cycle that will get started in August this year. All the information will be shared with you through our CFA website, and I would also like to ask you to please pass the word so we can help us out with the dissemination of this information because it is useful to all of us. Finally, I'd like to thank each of the sponsors because each one of you deserves to be mentioned. So we have DMP, the Inter-American Bank of Development, Banco de Bogotá, Bancoldes, Colcapital, Asobancaria, FND, Colcapital, FNOG, the Colombian market, the share market in Colombia, FENOGE, Finagra, EPM, and Bancolombia, and some other companies that had already initiated their projects or their talks with this accelerator. But anyway, thank you. Thank you very much because this is undoubtedly what helped us out to move forward with this climate agenda in the country. And of course, I'd like to thank as well the United Kingdom government and the whole team that is representing them in the country because it is thanks to them that we have managed to create this event and the accelerating process has been enabled to. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Claudia and Margarita, for your very kind intervention. With this, we would get started with today's first panel that is called Challenges and Advances in the Mitigation and Adaptation in the Most Important Sectors in Colombia. In this panel, we'll have Sebastián Carranza, Director of Climate Change and Environment and Sustainable Development, Carmen Duarte, who's coming from the Environmental Office from the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and Daniel Osorio, Director of Macroeconomical Policy in the Ministry of Treasury, Ministry of Finance. So we will have Claudia Martinez as the moderator of this panel. Thank you very much. Please welcome. We can sit each one in between. Man, woman, man, woman, man, woman. I love the gender balanced panels. And so please welcome. First of all, I'd like to welcome Mr. Carranza, Director of Climate Change. And you're going to tell us about this very important challenge that we have in our country. All right. Would also like to welcome Carmen. Carmen is coming from the group of climate management. She's coming from the Ministry of Finance, and I think she's key in this kind of climate conversation. And of course, we need to have also a representative from the Ministry of Finance. So here we have a representative of these macroeconomical issues that I think is absolutely key for this panel. So I'm very pleased to be leading this panel. In order to get started with it, I'd like to ask you, and I'd like to start by asking Sebastian, because you do have a general overview. So which sectors or which challenges do you, or which challenges and opportunities do you think there are in order to have a more interesting climate portfolio in order to reach this SDG the sustainable development goals that we have, that have to do not only to mitigate but also to adapt what we have so far. So the floor is yours. Claudia, thank you very much. I'd like to greet my fellow panelists, and I'd also like to thank Banco de Bogota and the United Kingdom government for this opportunity. Well, the challenges and the opportunities are plenty. I think that based on Ana Maria's presentation, we had let's say, a general understanding in terms of the costs of this DNC. And I think that in some specific and gross figures, we could actually say that it'd be important to have a financial mobilization of of the GDP that we have. And if we actually listen to the recommendations by the OECD and we thought about biodiversity, then we would say that there would be another point of our GDP. And historically speaking, we're investing about 0.2 or 0.16%. So that means that there is an important gap in the mobilization of these resources that we have in order to have a more consistent participation in terms of this climate fund tackling, or in the way that we tackle this climate change. So we need to actually make to expand the different solutions that we've had so far. And in that sense, I want to say that Colombia has been very effective in the way that they establish and they identify the different opportunities they have in order to establish the different priorities, and by identifying the different technologies. And I think that in that sense, we've been very strict in terms of the actions that we have within the DNC. And in that sense, we have somehow, we're still biased a bit, because those actions, they are not going to be escalated enough, and then we are very, very cautious whenever we draft our projects. And that's something that we see in terms on the investments that we have with the Green Fund and with the GEF, and we are very concerned about the technical component, which of course it is a legitimate concern, but in that sense we want to escalate what we have so far. We need to think bigger. We need to actually work on more transformational projects, and I think that that's one of the very important lessons, and I think that is important with what the accelerator is telling us, with the CFA is telling us today. Because yes, it is important to expand the scope of what we're doing and connect it with a specific consistent demand. And in that sense, I think that we have an important challenge, but also an opportunity that come together. And we also have important challenges in terms of adaptation and the cost of adaptation, because it is being estimated so far, and Ana Maria have already given us some figures in that sense. And we also have the information of the central bank in terms of what is going to happen if we don't react in time, or if we don't invest in time. And sometimes they talk about 5 points in our GDP in cost for the 2030. So it continues, this adaptability continues to be a challenge. We know that we have already endeavored in some taxonomy for adaptation and mitigation, but the innovation that you were talking about, Claudia, in your presentation, I think that it's important to be taken into account for the different stages that we have. Because, for example, the repayment processes, they tend to be too long, but we need to have more processes in terms of adaptation. And in that sense, unfortunately, we have very complex situations. We have, for example, we had a terrible landslide situation in Ketame last month that actually left behind more than 30 casualties. So we have some important events or incidents that are affecting our territory, and I think that that is going to have to do with the adaptability of our central government, national government, central government, and the other governance structures that we have in our country. Likewise, the indigenous governance is important to be taken into account in order so we can actually move all of the different resources that we have, and we can actually get to work together. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges that we have, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Sebastian. As you were saying, yes, there are plenty of challenges, and every day we have even more challenges, but each one of them is going to actually call us to actually conduct some actions. But Carmen, how do you see this from a very important ministry such as yours, from Mines and Energy, and in everything that has to do with this energy transition? And in that sense, this is what we need to talk about. So how, from your specific sector, we can transition to a more clean energy system. Well, this energetic transition is understood so far from the two different perspectives that you're mentioning. On the one hand, the challenges that we have in terms of justice, this environmental justice and climate justice and the social justice that we need to have in mind. And this is, let's say, the first part of a component of this energy transition. But then on the other hand, we believe that it is also an opportunity because this is a government, the national government's initiative that is boosting or that is trying to promote many different policies, different bills, different initiatives in order to achieve, at least to get started with this energy transition. So this transition as a challenge, I think it's got some specific or is comprised of some specific challenges. So in that sense, we're talking about the territorial planning system, and we're also talking about this population, these people that we have in these territories, and we're also talking about the whole different procedures or the different things that need to happen in order to have this transition. So we know that, for example, for the inclusion of these projects or the development of some financial projects, that means the renewable energies projects, for these projects to happen, there are many limitations. There is a lot of lack of knowledge, and there are some specific processes that maybe those municipalities that are subject to these vulnerabilities, they do not have the installed capacities in order to do so. So that's why we need to balance those specific objectives, but also the capacities to have in order to have adaptability and mitigation to happen. And now, in terms of adaptability goals, we see that the different municipalities or different regions throughout the countries that are the most vulnerable, we see that these are the ones that have the least amount of these goals, this kind of goals. So, for example, if we talk about San Andres or islands or Caribbean islands, they do not have as many goals in order to tackle these issues, and from the central government, when we have some limitations. So it is important to have this in mind, and actually to have some sort of balance in terms of the different proposals that we have in terms of the management of climate change for both the sectorial and territorial sector, because we see that from the mining and energy sector, we have seen that there's been a specific tool in order to move forward with the whole sector and all of the different companies and all of us who are engaged within the development of this kind of energies. But we don't see what the articulation might be like with the territorial management plans. So I think it is important for us to work hand in hand between those who are leading these specific territorial management plans together with we have done in terms of each territory. I think that every single territory has done some work, but from the mining energy sector, we have a specific proposal, and we need to get to work hand in hand with the private sector, with the private companies, both for the hydrocarbons and also the mining energy sector. So yes, we're moving all together in order to achieve these goals for the decarbonization. Thank you very much.
Well, I guess every single sector has every single department as well related to their vision as well. But let's say that we have to get into it as well, because over there is just the challenge that we have been placed because we have some plans as well, and we're gonna tackle about that as well. So I would like to ask you today, what's the role to the finance role, because you have in your hands the economy of the country as well. So which are those climatic challenges that we have from finance ministry as well? Thank you very much. And CFA as well, and to the government as the Bogota's Bank as well, and a really special panel partners. So first of all is the awareness about related to the existential threat or menace that we have in the government, And Mr. President Pedro has been clear, totally agree related to this weather change topic, and purely in economical terms as well. For being this my role as well, and some external and economical issues as well, this weather change represents an existential threat for the Colombian economy as well. Not only for the specific, but there are some physical risks as well that we were talking, because we are facing a transition risks because our economy depends on in a high percentage of some mining resource and petroleum resources as well, because we have been moving forward related to the fiscal independence with the final in the last tributary reform, because they're coming and will become from those sectors as well. So the economy, as everything, is just an existential menace as well, coming from the weather change. So the Ministry of Finance is really aware of that and is moving forward of the design of the strategy in order to, because the next week we're going to launch the strategical plan as well from the Finance Ministry, because it has 3 pillars as well. And I guess that is the challenge. In some countries, as we have, for example, in Colombia, the Ministry of Finance is really responsible because of the strategy economical finance as well, to the NPD as well because of the fiscal strategy, and as well because of the financial resource as well. The strategy as well, it has 3 pillars as well: economical one, a fiscal one, and regulation and finance regulation as well. Related to the economical finance regulations as well, is to recognize that so far we have been really reactive, facing the topic of the shocks that the economical receive because of the weather change as a consequence. So a response as a fiscal, as additional resources when those kind of things happen with disasters, for example, that couldn't be like that as well. 2010, 2011, they spent 11 million pesos mitigation. And moving ahead, and that's the vision that finance has, those shocks and those financial risks, because there has to be the focusing of the strategic and the strategy with management and risks and micro fiscal risks as well, because of the fiscal strategy. And here we like to talk a little bit more in detail. I don't know if we have enough time to do so because of the regulation of the finance, as the president is fostering in this conversation. The fiscal strategy is crucial as well. The Ministry of Finance has a clear awareness as well that is this weather change requires some huge investments. There is a huge of many decades that requires some investments in a really considerable size related to the size in a comparison with our economy size as well. And facing that is also necessary. We were talking about creativity as well. We were talking about thinking in creativity, creative mechanisms, because of the finance and the government ministry and the government will be able to finance these kind of things with the sustainable and fiscal sustainability as well. There is a challenge. So I would like to just to tell you something as an example on the table, the fiscal rule. We have spoken big time about the fiscal rule because it has some mechanisms that allows us to spend a little bit more if there is a natural disaster. For example, if there's a natural disaster, for example, we need to go to the resources, and the fiscal is going to be we're going to give the step to this government as well. So as we were saying in a second before, we're not talking about disasters or something like that. So we're going to talk also related to the economical as well, because this is just a part of the strategy. Moving forward, we're going to start talking about some mechanisms and to include some weather strategic movements as well with the government to be able to finance these investments as well in a really sustainable way. This fiscal strategy, which naturally is going to be according to a fiscalization strategy as well, related to have been moving forward with green bonuses and strategies as well, because the government has done a huge effort, and you're going to listen to it in these coming days as well. So we need too much creativity from the government as well, because it's really designing some mechanisms to think how it's going to be working. And there are too many rivers of these kind of things. A lot about this topic of mining and petroleum exploration related to this topic. As we were saying, this country is going to abandon the exploration and exploitation as well as a consequence of the transition. Energy transition is inevitable. That's the future. At the same time, vision that the sector, the finance sector, has as a ministry. For example, it says there's going to have some short term because of the resources that are related to the exploitation and exploration and the mining exploration in a short term as well. For example, they said the exploitation is going to continue as well because we have a huge activity related to exploration. So there is a huge challenge how to transit related to the resources path as well, to this content as well. The design of that strategy is crucial. And finally, is the pillar of the finance regulation. And I tried to talk about what we have been discussing related to, I don't know, maybe finance policy, because there are some components. First of all, regulation, that is the finance ministry is doing it to facilitate these kind of conditions as well for these investments will be able to do so as well. So related to what we have been talking in the private sector as well, we have been moving forward related to innovation, the green taxonomy as well. We have been discussing before as well. It has been a really huge effort as well because they have been working on the sub pillar, if you want to call it so as well, because that is the same thing because it's the honor of bicentenary group as well and consolidated as well because it's one of the biggest consolidated groups as well within the country, and it's going to have a really important role as well with this group as well to establish credit lines as well. And there are some things with bank codex, for example, that is very important. These topics that we were discussing, I was going to talk about because the government has the intention in the strategy as well of the same way. So there are three pillars as well where we're going to start working on in order to face these kind of existence situations. Wonderful. I learned this transition, this energy transition, the 60% of the incomes from the country will be with the mining and energy sector, that we have a gradual conversion as well, seeing the huge evaluation that we have to prevent, and not only to say, well, because we're going to have more resources or something, the disaster as well. And it's going to be a really difficult equation as well because too many of these same scenario as well is going to be with this weather as well, and it's going to be aligned to all of these instruments as you said, because imagination and finance imagination has to be to increased as well. So we're going to work with this section as well. Okay, Sebastian, so you're going to start all over. So how many of them do we have here? What about the actions that we're going to start and how to prioritize and how to act? Yes, Claudia, thank you very much. And I guess going with the same line that our panel is here building up. Before getting into the topic of actions as well, there is an element from the Environment Ministry and related to too many sectors because we're trying to do with the presidency as well. And it's that convergence, the public convergence as well, around which are the policies that we are determining the country as well. And one of the government that we have here is the weather policy and the peace policy as well. And the peace policy, and these are multiple focuses as well with the constructions and security and everything. We just try to co-related to this convergence as well because we have historical moments that Colombia has been joined with the Havana signature as well, and the procedure, the OCD as well. This is trying of consolidation of total peace and support. And this guy with the hands territory to understand such a way what is really important to work on these policies to the organizing territory around the water, for example, orientated to dialogue, social dialogue as well, around deforestation and dialogue as well, coordinated with some sectors that you say, well, overall the private sector in our relationship with the construction of a joint peace construction as well within the private sector and the agriculture, energy, and Carmen was telling us about the communities and the fair transition. We studied how to understand as well related to justice. Let's say those are one of the actions that we see really coming soon in a short term to be able to move forward to the justice in our relationship with the territories ordering and peace component. Saying that, and let's figure out related to integral communities, we could think the investment areas more relevant ones as well related to protection and restoring of the forests and sustainable environments as well. There is a huge task to do so, mainly understanding deforestation as well to the restoration and conservation agenda as well the development of the rural development infrastructure for mobility, decarbonization, generation of energy, integrated work within cities and regions as well because of the diversity, reindustrialization as well. And let's say that those will be those H areas where we're going to have the integral plans that Carmen was saying. There have been prioritizing as well some actions and policies and coveraging the fiscal regulations, energy, and the development itself, or some policies within the environment sector, for example, instrumentalization of the markets of carbon as well. So we have a huge challenge facing us as well because in order to have this convergence as well in these areas that we are prioritizing, we see as well too much relevant the cabinet of the weather space as well because there is a really integrated port to the system of the weather change as well because we have these authorizations because too many of the organizations that were here we have a convergency point as well regarding new international policies as well. We work with the financial committee and regulatory committee as well, but we see with too much relevance this substantial from the cabinet as well, and the president itself himself given a line related to we're gonna be towards related to this privatization to cut just the deadline, of course, always in the place 2030 because it's just 7 years time. We are developing planification partner. We can see the dialogue in a high level and efforts like this accelerator that we have been presenting is going to be help us to have this convergence as well to look for a wide line, a government line as well, seeing some focusing as well, and to start boosting these plans because of the private sector and the investments, the expenses and everything, the risk capital and the finances as well, the instruments based on the GA and the fiscal rules as well, and so other areas that we haven't ended up to identify them as well because they could have as well punctual recognition because of some actions orientated in order to keep it in mind this kind of the presentation letter to Colombia saying these are the huge transformations that Colombia that we have in these coming 3 years, and this exercise that you are presenting today is a really good base as a strategy and financing strategy as well as we were saying with the corridor of weather financial to articulate the demand and around some priorities because there's many structure to the program level. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very completed and well from a perspective, really wide perspective, because as you said, we need to go from the governance from the country, how to be together about that governance because we have that objective and well, just placing on the table related to the Petros president as well, the president Petro as well. So, Carmen, yourself. Well, as you were mentioning, it's to implement all these plans that we have to the sectorial level. And I do believe we need to start by doing an analysis in detail of the MRV. So we have diagnosis as well related to the country. We have these plans, for example, to implement with these sectors as well, with this thing as well. With we implement some actions to mitigation plans as well for just a way, such a way of another. We have been contributing to this weather challenge as well. On the other hand, is the development of the transition or towards the renewable energies, which is a challenge with this updating for infrastructure or too much investments and economical and technical strict and acknowledgements to go to new energies as well, so to think more in the analysis and the development of energies, geothermia or vectors, so hydrogen, the development of offshore projects or hydrocarbons or eolic ones as well. So to start implementing based on that measure that we have related to emissions to the country. Also is to continue incentivizing the productive sector to accomplish with these goals, and too many people are understanding because we need to do an investment because certainly it's going to be a higher investment as well but at the beginning, but in time it has been reflected in their earnings as well as a company and the profits for the country per such as. So the fact to be able to have these programs of energy transition and the whole productive cycle of the hydrocarbon sector from the beginning to have all the implementation of these modules and these initiatives so are gonna be useful because of the mitigation, and of course adaptation will be made as well because it's really important for the mining and energy sector. We're developing too many projects, small projects as well of solutions based on nature, based on communities where we have a relationship with the companies within the sector and with communities as well who are located in the influence sector of this project, and you check the needs and how we contribute in a really joint way with these projects as well. So is that as we were saying, just to arrive here with the productive sectors as well, and they feel the need and the motivation to articulate because those are the bets. We have the energy communities. Well, even if at the beginning is that they understand how the way they work of the module, the energy module of full reimbursements as well. They have too many proposal and productive around what we have the capacity to generate these kind of things and administration of their own energy. Thank you very much, and thank you very much. And finally, Danielle is a whole challenge, all these kind of experiences that you can tell us from today as well. So, I do believe that I spoke a little bit about the strategy that we have in every single one of the pillars that we have. We like to talk about what we said about all of them as well. The first thing that we need to move on the micro fiscal strategy. I'm sorry, with the planification of economical strategy as well, macroeconomical towards the future. So over there, the policy of the government has been really clear as well, and the development clear is clear as well to say, well, here we're going to have some investments as well to substitute this structure as well because of these kind of things. And about that, we have had so many discussions and related to talk about these resources and petroleum companies as well. And we have been moving forward as well. What we're going to talk about this transition, and the ministry has said as well in economical we have three transitions. First of all is the energy transition, understanding as an economy that with this consumption as well. Second, you know about our colleagues in this case. This transition as well. Our protection will be coming from associated to the production of mining and how to substitute as well. So this is the great bet to the government, and not only this one, but we're talking about to reindustrialize as well to work with this sector as well, to work with these exporters related to what have been taken into account. And thirdly, is just a transition per se. So there are too many challenges. The government has been moving forward because the tributary reform the last year was a step towards that direction. So of course we have some resources overall from the mining and petroleum industry, but towards we have the reform has a revision because there was some other tributary reforms that assumes towards in order to this as well. So we're going to talk about the fiscal rule as well. Related to this part of things, the Ministry of Finance as well is working on as well. We have been talking to Sebastian as well, to check, to think, about the fiscal space. And let's say that is not only for being able to invest on those ones, but to finance as well sustainable things using maybe some finance tools as well and creative ones as well that we have been supporting because that space is really necessary as well with some investments. Are we gonna continue working together? We have to continue working together. And 2024 year, we're gonna tell the country what we're doing related to that and the financial regulation, and maybe is because of its nature as well of the business itself. Is maybe the government has been moving forward. So of course we have been moving forward in related to finance regulations, and I would like to insist, and from the Bicentenary Group as well, I said part of the strategy will be some considerations, and that has been pretty clear because of the government, the conception of these new scenarios as well related to finance with this direction, of course. So we were talking about bad codex, and very good thing because this is a huge initiative, for example, because what allows us, among some other things, we're going to be able to identify some projects as a pipeline of projects we're going to be able to have for being subject of financing as well, because the government is really interested, and the government it has seen with a good eyes the complement that we can see within these strategies, cooperation strategies, and the same policy of the government. So the example is pretty clear because of these as well. So let's say that is going to have the acceleration of these kind of things as well. So like every single is matches with the needs that we have, but called is to look for some projects to finance as well, with some mechanisms as well, and the mechanisms, equity mechanisms as well, because we have the capacity to do so, because it has the lines and faculties. So there is a huge channel for the government could be able to establish these kind of things as well with these consistent problems as well. So also we're saying that some credit lines, some financial ones as well, with some benefit, with some resources as well, to be able to be financed in that way. So there is a series of actions consistent to the triple strategy, and there is something that we're going to continue working on. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Pretty interesting. We could remain here listening to these topics because here there is the weather future of the country seeing related to this sustainable environment and what we're doing from the weather changes was really interesting. The energy transition and how finance ministry is really interesting. It has been moving forward as well with these kind of things as well, with our really action plans as well. We really thank you. We're going to start with the main course as well of the actions, as you were talking to the Ministry of the Transition as well. The last course we were discussing the huge related to geothermal as well, the hydrogen as well, and everything related to many innovations and solar innovations as well. So we're gonna be here. Here's where the action is. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sebastian, Carmel, and Claudia, for your intervention. As follows, we're going to know the projects, the chosen projects in the second quarter of the Accelerator of Weather Change as well. We're just going to be giving the goals and the country as well. So we're going to welcome to management and environmental management as well as SAS with the projects of plants and composting as well. Welcome. Well, good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank CFA to participate in this beautiful project. This is not weird because there is something is updating, you know. But and I would like to be composed as well. Thank you very much to this live. Currently, we're talking about more than wastage to the these stones, where it's going to be generated because of the organic working of this, which is really contaminated as well, and its treatments as well. So only the 11.8% of the wastes are the ones who take advantage, and within those 11.8, the fraction organic, this is the most important as well, and because they were on that process as well. So how could be able to do so with the dioxide of carbon as well in our country, and that's in order to talk about this in less than 5 years as well. Because what are we gonna do with that lagging or opportunity to be able to talk? Because it's a really delicate topic as well. In this case, we're gonna talk about more about this, and in this case, and pollution is really high as well. Our company is 8, it has 17 years time. It's not a new company, it's a beautiful one. Is made by 5 partners, more than 20 years experience in the handling of wastes as well. We're coordinating with the ODS. We have ISO 9000 and 14001 as well, which is our process currently. We already started with this consecution of, we call it, no, it's not a waste, we call it raw material, because we use that as a raw material because it's an initial part. It is insulation and training for generators. We receive the products separated by the source and not contaminated as well. We transport them as well to the plant and to the transportation through the methodology to composting as well, because composting is the degradation of the organic material and aerobic with participation of the microbiological one as well. Posterior, the results of that is just a condition organic of soils as well. In this case, we're gonna be able.
All right. So talking about our collection customers, so what we have in GDA, the raw material is the organic material that we have. Let's say all of the waste is coming from different sectors, the commercial, institutional sector, and then we also have malls. In that sense, GDA works with 95% of the malls that we have in all the metropolitan area of the Antioquia region. And then in the industry, we work with very representative companies, amongst those Nutresa, and we work also with restaurants coming from crepes and waffles up to the Sodexo catering companies. They are our customers, and then we work with retail stores such as D1, Euro, and also with the accommodation industry. Most of the most important representative hotels are our customers as well. Now, what we have after this organic transformation process is a specific soil transformative device that we have in terms of all of the different materials that we work with. At the moment, we also work with the banana sector, fruits and vegetable sector as well in 10%, and we also work with the livestock sector. So every day we have more and more requests from these, let's say, soil adequators in order to get to work with the different fertilizers that we have, and specifically for the synthesis. What's the actual offer we have for 2023? We are expecting to collect more than 15,000 tons of this organic matter, and out of which we are going to collect them more than 500 generators. And in that sense, we work with the transformation. So what is what we here we're not generating more than 2,000 tons of CO2, and also we work with the leachate as well, and we're working with the green taxonomy in the component and for the organic waste material. What's our equity requirement that we need to have here? So our component, first of all, in the first stage, because there are plenty of stages, in the first stage we need $938,000. What do we have? We have so far between our partners, our shareholders have already invested in order to build on the facility. We want to have this facility because we have to have the vertical integration. And we also have some machinery that amounts to $315,000. We need to have more, and we need to have a debt that is going to be represented in the next 10 years, and that is for the general infrastructure that has to do with the civil works, and then the rest of the investment is for the capital of work. So this transformation plant that we're going to have, it is going to enable us to stop the production of leachate material, and then we are going to contribute to the decrease in CO2, and then we're going to work on the work with soil. This is going to help us with more than 3,500 hectares that are going to work with this. But in order of, or when talking about our growth escalation, we want to work with more than 4 main countries and we're main cities, and then we're also going to work with Panama and Ecuador as well. And now, in terms of the environmental benefits, it is possible for us to identify the growing benefits that have happened from 2023, that are going to happen from 2023 till 2040. So here we are going to have all the raw material that we're going to be working with. And this would help us out to work with more than 16,000 tons of compost, and this will help us out with the generation, with the reduction of the gas effects, of the greenhouse effect. In terms of the financial indicators that we have, here we have a return rate of 25% yearly and a recovery level of 6.5 years. We started with an EBITDA margin of 10.3, and to 2023 will be in 15.9%. Our EBITDA debt amounts to 3.4. And as to understand the total income, we have two main incomes. The first one has to do with the collection of this raw material, of this organic matter, and then on the other hand, the commercialization of these inputs that are generated after working with the compost. The behavior that we have identified so far after the implementation of this our plant, and since 2024 we'll have a positive behavior, and then our EBITDA will be positive. However, in 2023 to 2026 we will have a decrease given the logistic operations and the structural part of the civil works that we are going to be conducting by that time. And now, by understanding, and just to conclude, having this incoming structure both for the collection and also the trading of this compost, we could see what the behavior has been like for the total investment time. And on top of that, we would have an increased behavior, an increase in behavior, having in mind the compost creation, having in mind all of the expenses, and this is all going to be reflected in 2024. In the second semester 2024, we'll be working with this plant, with this processing plant. Okay, so with that, we'll conclude our presentation. This is who we are. This is GDA. We want to reach the peak of it. This is a real image, the one you see on the screen. This is what we want to do, and that's why we're committed to it. And we want to actually reach the highest peak in our field, and we want you to be part of this process that we are endeavoring in. So you're more than welcome to do so. You have our contact information in the bottom part of our screen. And once again, thank you very much to CFA. Thanks. Thank you. I'd like to thank the team of GDA, and I would like to welcome Ecopetrol with the green hydrogen projects with the refineries in Cartagena and Barranca Bermeja. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this very kind opportunity that you've given Ecopetrolos to present the industrial processes that we have undertaken in order to work with green hydrogen, which is one of the most important projects that we have for this green pathway that we want to be working with. I think that most of you are familiar with the Ecopetrol's strategy. As you know, we have four main aspects that we work with: growth, sustainability, and top-of-the-art knowledge, and competitive returns. So here we're going to be talking, and whenever we talk about green hydrogen, we think about sustainability. However, not only hydrogen, but the low emission hydrogens is present in all these four components, because we see hydrogen as an opportunity as to diversify our business model. It is not only for decarbonization, but it also has to be a profitable business. It has to be a business that is going to help us out with our knowledge. And once we have these two things, we are going to grow. So this is going to show you how the low emission hydrogen is going to be useful in our whole logics. At this moment, actually a year ago, you saw that we were a carbon-based company. But actually, if you check it out today, and actually in the past, there was a specific sector for the definition, transport, and mobilization of carbon products. But today, you'll find three new segments: the hydrocarbon sector, which is our mature sector. The next one is transmission, which is the one that we managed to have by the ISA concession, and we grew thanks to that. And many of the uses that we have today that are high in CO2 emission can be easily replaced with electric energy. We need the electron to be moving around. So that's why you see this new transmission segment. And then we have the newest one, which is the low emission segment. What I'm presenting you with here are the different solutions that we have with the low emissions, which is the gas and liquefied gas, and which is basically the participation that we have in the group. And this mature business, it is going to leverage different new diversification models. So as you can see, we started working out with energy efficiency. So everything starts out with this point. This is something that I'm sure you're familiar with. So what do we do in order to use less energy? So this is the energy efficiency. This is a very valuable leverage that we have, and that's why it is included within our business model. Now we move on to biogas. Biogas is a huge opportunity that we have now, and if you think about it, in these, let's say, small villages or towns, or let's say communities that are a bit far away from the urban areas or the urban centers, we could see how biogas could be useful for them. And now let's talk about the CO2 storage, which I think it is one of the aspects that we are not working as much as of now, but we want to. But this, I think, is the key to decarbonization, not only for companies, but for the entire country. So we need to get to work with that, not only Ecopetrol, but also the government. And now in terms of renewable energies, it is something that we've already discussed. You know that we have a 400,000 megawatts to be there as part of our objective. And then we have also natural climate solutions. Every company in this country is going to endeavor their efforts in order to diminish the climate effect. And so we need to have you need to have these natural solutions. For example, reservoirs and some other aspects that are natural. And now the low emission hydrogen. Why hydrogen? Why are people talking about hydrogen? Well, here, whenever we talk about this energy transition, means living as we're living today without affecting our environment. This is something that we all know. But it is also important that, having in mind our current conditions, we want to continue to have our status quo and to have everything as nice and cool as it is working today, but we don't have to have as high CO2 emissions as the ones that we have today. So if you think about it, hydrogen has half the equation figured out because they're never going to have CO2 in their equation because it doesn't have carbon within their formula. So that's why we need to be focused in the production. So if you don't need to invest in the production, then in the initial stage, then in the production, we need to do some things in order to decrease the CO2. We know that today we have a high emission of gray, and we know that this has a high level of CO2. We use it for refineries, for the ammoniac production, for methanol production, which are part of the aerosols. So what do I do in order to have lower production? So here we have the different colors, and with these colors here, they're telling me they're not doing anything, but they're just telling me who has the highest emission. So we have black, we have gray, and then we have green, and all of them are low emission hydrogens. So in that, Ecopetrol found a huge opportunity to invest in a new business model that is going to take me down, for example, to mobility. For example, in order to work with the transport system, in order to work with this kind of energy, in order to mobilize cars or vehicles. And this is going to entail 30 to 50% of the EBITDA in our group. So that's why I'm going to present you with on how we started to work that out. So I have already told you why hydrogen. And whenever you study hydrogen, and here we say, I told you that Ecopetrol has found a specific opportunity, but here the figures speak for themselves. So worldwide, people have recognized that this is a huge opportunity. So we are saying that it is possible to have 2.5 trillion of sales of hydrogen. So here we're not talking about only the raw material, but all of the different machineries that we need to have, the low production carbon emissions machineries. We're going to have more than 1,000 scalable projects that have already been announced. And of course, I think you've already heard about the Chilean case. Chile already has many projects that are going to be implemented by 2030. What else can we say? We say that 40% of the decarbonization initiatives can be actually be produced with hydrogen. So if you think about it, it's not that this is, let's say, as something that someone made up, but this is something that people are already working with. Why Colombia? We do have very good natural resources that are there, or that I need to have in mind whenever we talk about this green hydrogen. So here we're going to be working with solar farms and some other things. So these are the things that we could have in our country. And on top of that, we have an administration that has bet on this energy transition. Actually, the year before the last one, it was established the hydrogen roadmap that was going to be included, and actually we now have new guidelines and new investment opportunities in order to get to work with this green hydrogen. And in the same roadmap, we know that there are investments that go up to $2.5 million in order to get to work with these opportunities. Now, with all this in mind, and Ecopetrol acknowledges that this is a huge opportunity, what we said is that today we're working with 130,000 tons of hydrogen, and most of this hydrogen is gray, 10% is blue. And then out of this 130,000 tons that is for my own consumption, I am going to get to 2040 to a million of tons. That million of tons is going to be addressed in order to have some demand for it, not only at the national level, but also the regional level. And that demand is going to be coming, it is going to be for many different type of hydrogens, not only green, but also blue and white. Green, because hydrogen has the full capacity in order to get to work with that. Blue, because I can collect all of the carbon. And white, because I do know the subsoil that I have in our country. So that's why we have the expertise and can use it in our favor. So with that, we are going to get to $2.7 million of EBITDA. So we do have the experience. Actually, last year we established a pilot project in Cartagena with some electrolyzers there that has given us some very important data to get to work with the projects that I'm going to present you with. So these projects, today, the refiners we have in the country, they need some hydrogen. But if we had a bit more hydrogen, we could have some specific associated benefits that would actually work with these refineries. So what we're going to do, we're going to implement two projects where we're going to be working with more than 60 megas as to get to work with the specific figures that you can see in this screen. And what matters the most about these projects is that they are within the refineries. They can, so that's why I don't need to think about there isn't any further concern in terms of the environmental licenses, because they've already been granted, and that's something that I'm going to use. And that's very important for the refineries, because all of the projects that are in terms of refineries are there, but they don't have who the buyer for those projects are going to be it. So that means that my risks are actually being taken care of. And lastly, these projects are very nice, very interesting, because I can grow in my operation and I am not going to create any more CO2 emissions. On top of that, we are not going to have any further water consumption, because we would work with the specific components and everything that we have, so we can have this neutrality, and I can do some water compensation. They are using 20% less of soil use, and that is very important, because that's something that I can use in my projects. These projects are also going to be there for the first quarter 2025 to the third quarter 2025. Of course, there are some specific investments that we need to have there that amount to $250 million. But these are projects. Sometimes, I'm sorry, the slide is not going through, but these projects have some very interesting impacts. And when I tell you that I'm not going to cause any carbon emission, it is not only that, but what I'm going to stop producing is what 32,000 cars or vehicles are going to be producing in each of the refineries. So we can see the great environmental impact that we could actually be working with. And we also want to work with education. That's why we have more than 250,000 positions for people to study at the Savannah University. So we're going to be working with education, and we're also going to be working together with Germany for this regional center for renewable energies in one of the centers that we have in Cartagena. This because we want to train, we want to educate our people for these kind of projects. And as I was saying, we're not increasing the water consumption. With the CO2 and the emissions that we have, we are going to be working with that, but we don't want to impact the water consumption. So if you see, from the very beginning, these projects that we're going to be working with are sustainable in nature. But please let us not forget gender. We are betting for these projects to have, let's say, 50% of women participation in their design itself. And that is going to help us to have a very comprehensive project. These are not his projects, I should say, but these are the projects that are going to help us out to work with the development of the engineering that we have worldwide. You will find in different countries, let's say, bigger projects or larger projects, but they're going to be working to 2025, 2026. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Catherine, for your very kind remarks. Now we welcome TCC with the Gaia project and the residential project 2.0. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd like to thank CFA for the opportunity that you have kindly provided us with. Our energy transition projects are there in order to diminish the carbon footprint. All right. And the TCC Logistics Group has more than 55 experience in the national logistics industry. We are a very important player in the supply chain because we mobilize dreams and also the economy of the country. We have shipping services and cargo services. Many of you maybe don't know that we have international operations as well, and we leverage and we help the supply chain of many of our customers, and we also help them with the storage in order to help them out with the logistics of their operation. In total, our staff amounts to more than 4,000 people, and we are present in more than 32 different cities in Colombia, and we actually operate in more than 700 municipalities in our country as well. We are part of the transport sector, and we are responsible of 12% of CO2 emissions in Colombia. And our commitment as an organization is to accelerate our decrease of carbon footprint as to diminish the impacts that we may have, but also the impacts of our logistics chain. And here we have the life cycle. We need to talk about the life cycle of our product. How, as a logistics company, we can help our third-party companies or our customers to have a lower record of this carbon footprint given our clean operations. As an organization, we bet together with the private sector, we bet on 5 specific objectives that Colombia has. This whole proposal has been drafted in order to increase our logistics efficiency, and that includes, and at the moment we do have some electric cars, some electric vehicles, but we want to massify this use. In order to work with this sector, with the transport sector, there is a specific aspect that we need to have in mind. We want to decrease at least 1 million ton of these emissions. So that's why we want to work with these vehicles, and that's why we work hand in hand with the government initiatives as to actually get to work with this type of cars. There are some challenges, of course, but we do have the experience. We started working out with these electric cars, with electric vehicles, since 2014, so we already have almost more than 10 years of experience. So we do know this technology. We do know what the cost limitations might be. We know we have the maturity in this technology, and we can actually foresee what are the different challenges ahead, and we could have, let's say, access to some spare parts when necessary, and we could have these spare parts timely. But as a sector, as part of this sector, we have been a key player as to overcome those challenges. There are some other energy challenges, but we need to actually, and some other energy fields that we could be working with, but we need to actually start working with the change of our fleet, and not only for ourselves, but also to comply with or to achieve the national goals. As our previous colleague said it, hydrogen is very important, but we foresee that this is going to happen in 2026. But for us, this is not an option. Let's say this is something that we call a transitionary means, because it continues to be a fossil fuel, and something that let's say if I buy a vehicle today, it is a long-term decision. So the diesel vehicles continue to be an alternative, especially for the trucks or the higher storage cars that are going to be mobilized from city to city, but we want them to have the highest technology possible, and that's why we're going to continue to invest in that aspect. And as I said before, this is not only that we are going to consider only for TCC, but we want to mobilize the entire sector. Why? Because there are many challenges to overcome. In Colombia, and that's actually, we brought some specific figures at the national level. And in the transport and cargo sector, we have the lowest production level throughout the region. We have more than 60% is informal, so that makes that causes a specific war in the sector. But we don't want to contribute to that as TCC. We want to create some value through the logistics change. How? By using sustainability and having a better service for our customers. So these projects that we're presenting you with are twofold, and these are representative of what we want to do at TCC. As I told you before, we have the experience with the use of electric vehicles and electric cars, but we have experience in the transport sector for more than 55 years. So this is telling us that this is what we need to do. In the residential project is e-commerce based, as to assess how can we reach the end user and how can we reach each of our customers with that order that you required, but with electric cars. 1.5 tons cars, so we want to have 56 electric trucks that are going to help us out to bridge the gap amongst the cities or the urban cities in our country. And the Gaia project is a bigger or larger bet in comparison to the ones that we've done before. Here we have 27 tons trucks, and here this is for massive cargo in order to mobilize some shipment from a cargo from a point A to a point B. So what kind of opportunities we see with this project? First of all, we want to increase our productivity, because these are operations that we are currently conducted at the moment, but we do it so far through third parties. But by having our own fleet, we want to increase our productivity and to increase our managerial or administrative actions. And then we also want to, as I said, we said it before, to decrease this carbon footprint from our operations, and we want to replicate this model, because if we manage to do so, we want to support our partner organizations, our partner companies, to access the same kind of benefits that we may have in the future, because this is very important, because the informality that we need to tackle in our country is key, and we have more than 4,600 partners that we could actually impact.
Well, let's review a little bit about. I'm sorry. Well, it's here. What about the sectors that we have in 2.0? Every single person, all of us, we know that is in the latest year as well. We have a higher penetration as well, because every single time the market, it'll be awesome with the e-commerce in the end. How are we going to be with the vehicles in our houses? How are we arriving? There are some vehicles that are not designed that what Colombia is doing. We have the traditional fleet as well. So we have the package to our homes as well. So what we see here for this kind of couple of things as well is a really small one, because the logistic plan is going to be like this. So a small package to every single house, it'll be no matter what in a small vehicle. Not only small, inefficient, and fuel as well, it has to be electrical one as well. We're gonna be mainly in the main cities in the country. So we're gonna have a pilot as well, and the sector and Gaias as well, as we were saying. So we're gonna be this bed to mobilize as well bigger units as well. This is a corporate channel to mobilize as well here in Bogota City. Customer of loading of some markets, they're asking us, how do we do to mitigate my impact with the transportation that you are delivering us? This is Gaia, Project Gaia as well. Very important. You see the impact that these vehicles have as well, because it has a potential for 100,000. When you see these projects, only residential sector is going to avoid an emission of 5,223 for a total of 16,000 tons avoided. The most important part of this project we can have as a briefly think in this slide. So if you see, for example, in the initial slide, we have around 4,600 alleys. So the objective of this project is a pilot is to fulfill this should be replicable for the 4,600 alleys as well, as we were saying. So it's not going to be the 4,600 alleys in this case, only for Colombia. So what can we contribute with the difference with the experience that we had? For example, we knew how to do, so we know that we have the know-how as well. So we know how to develop and how to design according to that transition, because the commitment is with every single alley that we have here. How? To help to do those transitions. So this is per se is not gonna have anything, because we need to guarantee as well according to this transition, because it's going to be committed to give them some contracts to a long term to have this guarantee as well in order to work on these these important things as well. Because for example, if somebody has a driver license, that's going to be ready to drive as well, because we call some expert and really warm guys as well to the treatments as well, because it's going to be either to talk to contribute as well with the impact. How do we pretend these kind of things? In this pilot, we talk about this. 30% of the drivers will be women as well, or migrant people as well. A really important data as well that we have here in Colombia in the logistics sector of the transportation sector as well. Women doesn't have a really kind of important main story as well, but it's not just a really informal way. What we need to carry, what is all the guarantees as well. We're gonna talk about 400 kilometers because we're gonna have a change of battery, the useful life as well with their batteries as well. So this barrier for the vehicle they don't work. So there are some other players, or there are some other sectors where you can use it. For example, some agriculture industry. Those batteries are continuing working because the battery doesn't work because of the vehicle, but it works for some other ways as well. Transportation ways are going to have this position as well. So what is the investment that we're looking for? So we're looking for the residential sector for 1,000 US dollars, and from the other side 2,800 US dollars as well, because we're gonna have this kind of because we're gonna have this blender mechanism. When you talk about this in Colombia transportation side, this is something that we don't have so far. So we want to know this is possible, this is feasible. I will try to do so. That's why the invitation today is to invest capital in impact and transparency project, because we are not TSC, a Colombian company. We're part of the sector of transportation at Colombia as well, because there is not something different. When something didn't happen to speed the weather change as well as to do the transportation to fuel as well, it's going to be kind of difficult as well. So that is the invitation. It's today's invitation. Although these are our contacts. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Cindy and Peter and Pedro, for your invitation. Well, welcome to the UACETP Avante with the project of implementation of electrification project in a route in the framework of the implementation of ACTP in Pasto City. Welcome. Well, good morning, you all, to the people in this auditorium, to thank CFA and every single sponsor and strategic allies as the government, the national government, that they were doing this effort as well to talk about this event. It's really enriching to share the different experiences as well as the private part as well. So we're gonna go really fast because time is very short. So we have built up a presentation, a real executive presentation today about the projects as well. We are Avante, is an administrative unit, special related strategical public transportation, which is implemented in the Pasto University. Pasto has 439,000 inhabitants as well, because we count currently with this 425 diesel buses as well. But our huge challenge is to do the reposition in a huge amount of numbers to this energy transition. The players of the project will be the administration and municipality as well, passed to the great capital as the city hall of the current mayor, as well as an entity decentralized for the city hall as well. On the other side as well, we have the transportation companies as well. We have two transportation companies that were composed with this transportation. Well, here we have a demand of passengers per year. A very important one as an evidence how the behavior is. The ideal scenario is for 2014 when we closed with a really important number. We were talking about 39 million passengers, 303. We're going to have a decreasing, and we found with a phenomenon that everybody saw the pandemic, post-pandemic module. So we started 2020, as you said, in 2021. In the graphic, the demand was one of the most difficult transportation situations as well. It was the fleet as well, because it was the parked as well in every single community as well. So in 2022, we closed with 21,259,095 passengers. And also to tell you that this year we're going to increase in with that demand and then recovering as well. The ideal scenario is to write 2000 2014, 2015. So we had huge users and passengers of the public transportation. So our project is basically focused in 15 electrical buses for Pasto City. It has an $6 million and is 100% electrical. We need to highlight as well. It's not hybrid; it's 100% electrical. So where we have done some technical tests and telemetric tests as well. We're gonna see as follows a video at the end of this presentation. And a really environmental impact, which is really important as well. We can realize here in these huge projects as well in the graphic, which would be the emissions that we can generate and reduce as well. So we're talking about 1,300 tons. And to solve this with this acoustic contamination as well. And this graphic, the next bars diagram as well, you can see the panorama, the current panorama, the pilot project as well, and how could be our phase number one in this project that we have been facing lately. And the social impact, which is really important as well in this project as well. And with these 30% as operators as well. And currently with this transportation has just one woman. The idea is to include with this electrical fleet minimum 30%, a bigger number of users. Is a really pilot rule, which is going to be able with universities as well. We're going to be able to have more efficiencies to the demand and to improve life quality as well as diminishing of their respiratory diseases. The opportunity is a huge opportunity. It's a scalable project as to match equity as well in intermediate cities in LATAM. So for Colombia, we could have the first intermediate city where you can come with this infrastructure and with this energy transition to the one where the national government is supporting. Our components of investments, there are three of them. So we need, first of all, buses, electrical buses, 8 meters long, with capacity of 40 passengers, and recharge infrastructure to implement in the 4 workshops that we have, and assistance and technical and transfer of knowledge and interventory to the follow-up of the project, with the purpose to give some exhaustive trainings to the transporters and their teams and the technical teams in order to work with this new fleet. The project stages there will be the feasibility study delivered in August 2023, and the 2 million truck ton when we already count with the perfectibility and feasibility as well as acquisition and financing of the project, which is really important the topic, as we are the banking private sector strategical allies, and how to leverage that financing of the project in the different components as well. A process of hiring on teams as well, on fleet and standardization, and an initial of operational of the electrical fleet with an execution of 2 years time from the acquisition of the financing of the project sessions. The financing of the project, I insist, is a cost of approximately 6.5 million US dollars. A capex and subvention, of course, which is divided as electrical fleet in $4 million, an infrastructure recharge in $1.5 million, and a technical assistance at $1 million, and OPEX, which is uploaded to the transporters or local operators to the rate. Timeline, we have created this timeline because we created this feasibility rate as well, because in the end we're going to tell you with the FEP, stabilization of rate standards, because it's going to leverage the cost of the technical tariff as well against the user, financial management as well, the convocatory of acquisition of the project, and the starting point of initial of the operation with the pilot project in the alt of 2025. Here We made just with Coxville as well. We were talking about the market, which would be the possible business modules, and it could be. And we found as well something related to the module of the public investments at Medellin and delivering loaning at Medellin and Montevideo as well. There are too many modules, and we have to start to the next module business as well. Business module related to the dimension under capex and acquisition of the electrical buses, public investments, and private financing as well, and an opex with a cost of electrical buses as well, transporters and local operators, and this is just a business model we have been seeing here for our project for acquisition of this electrical fleet. The investment is scalable as well as we were saying. So it's gonna be focused and have priority to start with the energy transition with the pilot projects. I don't know what happened with the presentation. Thank you. So we're going to start with a pilot project of 15 buses, $6 million. So that's our priority. Well, we have a second phase and a third phase as well, because we have all those of the majors, because it's gonna be gradually speaking, and it's not gonna be just like something complex for doing so. So the second phase is gonna be 52 buses, $25 million, and the third phase, 86 buses in total, 39 million, for a total of 153 buses with 70 million US dollars. And finally, I close it up with a sentence saying, join the revolution of sustainable mobility in Pasto and in Colombia, and with a video that there were some tests that we did some electrical bus at Pasto. Thank you very much. Downwards, you can click and play. Okay, tell you something. We were just looking at 20 meters. It was really great results. As you know, Pasto is a really interesting city as well. Sí, no traduciendo así que yo el cerebro es mañoso. Buscar. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, David, for your participation. And we're going to welcome Evolti Clean Energy, a brilliant for future. This way. Well, nice to meet you. My name is Juan Manuel España, co-founder and executive of Evolti. I have more than 10 years experience within the sector, but 11 time a year it was just came in at 50 meters from here, Canadian corporation, my 130 employees. I had the opportunity to go to Bangladesh, Asia, South America to access to energy as well. Afterwards, we came to the academy to Medellin. I had the opportunity to lead the first pilot of communities in this Colombia, so I won some awards of the MIT, but it's not only until 3 years' time that I found this proposed as well in the companies as well, with this transition energetic as well. I have a partner here with these many sectors as well, with this renewable energy, and a third party as well. I had partner with just some career in this financial field as well. So we convinced to quick to the Bogota to meet to join us in this purpose to leave this solar to more places at Colombia as well. Behind our founder team, we are being supported with coordinators and facilities as well. We had more than 40 projects in solar from Pasto until Santa Marta. We have some company who have offices and branches, Bogota, Pasto, and Santa Marta. I love people from Pasto as well. Currently, we have more than $1 million deployed in the generation areas related to some investors. They have been with us with some solar projects in more than 5 or 6 years time. We have too many LAs in Bancolombia, Banco Occidente. We have some leasings from solar projects and industrial ones and commercial ones. We work with the best vendors of solar technologies as well. In the country as well, we're a company that we have been passing through the Ascenso, the founded the Bolsa de Valores of Colombia. And we have been working as well when we're thinking about how to do with these projects, it's going to be able with more safety as well with a really sustainable perspective as well in a long term as well. Which is the situation related to this energy transition? Because we have maybe you have heard about these headlines as well. Colombia is facing a really strong phenomenon of El Nino with this hydric. We has been exposure the country to a reduction offering of energy during these coming years as well, with something which is really difficult because too many of the projects of renewable energies to huge scale are stopped. So the Outlook project was suspended like more than 1 month ago, and most of them with these other projects as well, they're stopped because of the environmental licensing and social licensing connection to the network and electrical capacity as well. That's why we have done a really huge bet to evolve to how to do different things as well and doing in a different way. Our proposal is focused in some solar farms as well, interconnecting till 1 megawatt, which is going to be over 2 hectares. So that we see with the mini farms as solar mini farms as well, more agility, less time, more capacity of generation, in a really dispersed way as well, and a fastest way as well, and a minor risk related to the social projects as well and to the scores that we have currently. And in this Colombia, this regulation it has changed as well 1 year and a half as well. We have been so many small farms as well, and is gonna be able the financial part as well is gonna be able to work more than 1 year as well to visualize as well. And in Colombia as well, more than 1 year as well as good as well, business model as well, and mini farms as well. So you deliver energy to the interconnected national system or some assets that are going to be connected to the distribution local network to the country as well, and the cell itself is commercialized to the distribution because of the law. They need to acquire the minimum the 10% of its energy coming from non-conventional sources, renewable energies as well, and too many commercializers as well and trade companies as well. They face the company because they don't see they don't have energy for these coming years. That's reality. That's the conversation day by day with the commercializers and the small ones as well overall. So besides the law gives us as an additional support, the operators of the network are they have a mandatory rule to buy this kind of thing. So what we did the business model as well, the self-energy guarantee as well. Why? Because the government Since too many years ago, they saw a problem, an issue with the high dependency of the huge scale projects with that focus into decentralized generation. It was enabled to do this business model as well. So it's really interesting. So more than 1 year, we have been working in structure two mini farms, which is the proposal that we have today. A mini farm that we have here. Puerto Berrío, Antioquia, and Taminango, Nariño, both of them are located with good radiation over national roads as well, good access for logistics for the projects themselves. Less than 1 kilometer of municipalities as well. We're just gonna have the security and the because of the public order issues as well, and work liberal people as well in the playing rounds in productive farms as well. But currently, they have some pieces of soil without any kind of usage. So we're looking for how to diversify productivity of these kind of firms or stockholder or something or the productive. Well, what about the benefits that we have with the small farms with the generation in huge scale? So first of all, we're pretty sure that we can develop on this huge scale of mini farms as well in a fraction of time. In a comparison with the products of generation of the huge scale and solar ones that currently they are taken because of licensing or something easily or 5, 6 or 7 years times. Document procedures as well. A mini farm, they need a license and they don't need to go through the teller or something to go to some procedures that take too much time. So they could be 8 months or 1 year, 1 year and a half as well. So because we mitigate those kind of times as well, because we do the management of that with the operators within the distribution network as well. So we have a minor impact, environmental impact as well, because it's going to be 200 hectares or 100 projects or less hectares, because we have the less coverage, because we have a less affectation with the system, and so we have the possibility to have more owners, more people in this business related to energy transition as well. And finally, the connection and infrastructure and transportation. The mini farms can connect to any single point of the network as well. Because of the huge farms, they cannot do so. So in the last convocatory that we had related to the capacity, we was rejected the 80% of the solicitudes related to connection of the generators into huge scale, which means the business in a huge scale is really uncertain, has any kind of a level of uncertainty, and well, to the investors, to the financiers, to the investors and the commercializers of energy as well. The opportunity of investments of this, there are $2 million to cover the capex of those two mini farms, so $1 million per mini farm as well, looking for the 50% of leverage with and as well as the equity as the debt is gonna be self of energy sure because of the contract of long term with commercializers as well with the CPA as well due to the support with liquid rents as well. And these small farms will generate incomes of more than 1,600 million pesos per year as well. So with a return of to 7 years generating a bit to the investor 15 or 17%. The construction of operation would be on charge of all the Volti with some uncover and infrastructure with Sura as well, to be able to guarantee as well the correct engineering as well, the operation to be have with this money available as well. How the procedure of development of structuration of the mini farms. We're going to start with 5 months where we're going to have these kind of legal studies or titles and negotiations and everything, terrains and commercializers as well, corporations, regional, every single actor involved for the projects will be doable as well. And currently with these two mini farms, they have been passing through all these projects, so we are ready to start constructions, looking for investors that they want to have at this stage as well. We're betting to big time to the mini farms. We know there's going to be really agile as well, because what we have here is to bring here the best about the rest during this kind of industrial things as well, because we can do so because they're really agile and versatile, as really efficient with the rigorosity, with the technical side as well, and let's say with the seriousness because of the huge scale, everything is combined into these kind of projects as well. So afterwards, we're going to go to the operation. 3 years time, we're going to have the monitoring and maintenance as well. And finally, within the contract OBM as well, we include the availability as well of the equipments as well to be the live time usage as well because of the final period. Well, currently, besides these two, we have more 6 more mini farms, but our beds is going to be 2035. We'd like to have 500 small farms as well to 2035 because it's a small part, because it's a small part of what the country needs. So we calculate as well, potentially it's going to be 6,000 mini watts as well, mini small farms as well. It's going to be just the 10% of the facilitated until 2035. It's not that much as well. With the 20% of the projects in the huge scale that they were approved this year, it's going to come more than 24 million of investments as well for solar projects. The investment is already there, the demand is already there, we have the need, so we need to have the exit of this with solution because of this because in the meantime we're discussing each other how to work the licensing and capacity within their network, so time passing by as well. So in the meantime we're going to construct 500 mini small farms as well. Kind of the impacts of these projects as well. Every single mini farm is going to contribute to energy security with 2,300 megawatts per hour in this case, and of course,
it is going to contribute to the decarbonization in an equivalent of 1,100 tons, and it also is going to work in 402 hectares for the whole territory. So this is nothing but an invitation for you to move on to the solar revolution. We're not going to switch from an energetic to the next one, but let us transform the way that we're producing energy. We can hopefully call on many people, on many landowners, so we can move on to this business. Thank you very much, and this is my contact information. Thank you very much, Juan, for your intervention and also your program. And finally, would like to invite Focus Group to the stage so they can tell us about their project. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning in the presentation of our project. Our project is called Rent Energy Clean Rental. The objective that we have here is to reinvent the transportation of the containers that are in the Colombian ports and to work with renewable energies. Here we want to contribute with an important change of a specific sector that represents a high impact in the pollution and contamination worldwide. We have already checked on this, and we know that both the air and sea transport are the ones that contribute to most contamination around the world. So our goal is to eradicate the way in which we traditionally work at the ports. How are we going to do so? First of all, we are going to switch our machineries, because the ones that we have as of now are diesel-based machineries and that do not work as much with electric energy, and we want to get to work this together, this electric energy together with renewable energies. And on the other hand, we're a renting company, so we are going to rent our machineries and we are going to provide the maintenance services for the Colombian ports. And third of all, we have a scalable project that is going to be worked around not only at the local level but also internationally speaking. This is a project that got initiated in the Colombian ports, but we want to actually escalate it to other South American and Central American ports. Some of the impacts that we are going to have are going to be discussed by Cesar, who's the expert. Good morning. this project have a positive impact in the preservation of the environment, especially in the carbonization at the ports. As you can see in this image in the lower part of this screen on the right hand, we can see how we are going to contribute with the decrease of 517 tons of CO2 a year. So that means that we're going to be working with more than 3,000 tons with a specific project that is going to be modulated and it is going to be scalable in the future. Now, if we escalate this farther down the line, and we're very optimistic with all of the specific devices and machineries that we work with, we would be talking about more than 34,000 tons. But then if we take it to the regions and when we actually put it out to the whole region, Latin American region, we said that here we have an infinite level because here and in this contribution to the carbonize these ports, we are going to contribute to the industrial sector. Now, to give you a general overview on what the market is like, we know that there is a robust experience in that sense, and we know that this is not experimental experience, but we know that in some American, European, and Asiatic ports, there's been some transformation or some switch in this kind of machineries they work with in the ports, and we know what kind of quality they have. So here we have an image of a Long Beach American port, and then we have some other ports that are presented here. But what we know here is that there are some trials that have already been conducted in China, and so this we don't want to get there, but we know because we know that Colombia also wants to create some job opportunities in these kind of platforms where ports are actually close to societies that are highly impacted by poverty and some other social aspects. So this is the trucks that this is an example of the trucks that we will be working with. They're very similar to an industrial truck, but they are particularly different in some terms. Most of the times they need to work indoors, so that's why they don't need to have a license plate. They have some specific environmental permits, and they have to run short distances. So this allows us to have a very high performance battery for the operation. And the target market are, as I told you before, are the ports, but given the conversations that we've established with some of our customers, we've seen that it is also to be used in different industrial areas or industrial parks where we have high cargo or very heavy cargo shippings, and that's why they may have some problems with the maintenance or some other things because they're not used to be designed for such purposes. So as I told you, this is a project that is to be scalable very easily. In Colombia, this port industry works as follows. Most of the times, these are lands that are owned by the state, and they need to have this port concession. And here we have some of the ports that are some of the companies that are working in these ports in the country, and what kind of specific support do they need. And that's how we're working with trucks, which is one of the key players in this game. These are the main container ports that we have in Colombia. Here we have some of the ones that were being operated by Colpuertos, and there are some other ones that are private. But here we have two ports that are being deployed in Urabá Antioqueño in Antioquia that are going to be working with containers, and this is part of the potential that we see in our market. The current inventory that we have in our country is, as Cesar said, that amounts to 480 trucks, and these are the different ports that we have in the country with the different containers. The container capacity, these ones are in Cartagena, Barranquilla, Buenaventura, Santa Marta as well, and then we have another potential for Antioquia. Having said that, this is the environment, or this is the context that we have, and now let us tell you about the project, the pilot project that we have. So we want to work with 50 terminal trucks that work with these containers, thinking about the module they have because they can actually escalate it. So that's why we selected that amount. And what we have here in terms of renewable energy is 3.4 megawatts speak, in order to work with 6 electric lines and 50 terminal trucks. So this is going to help us out. The execution or implementation time, and it's going to take 16 months. So here we can see our ambition. We are going to start with this pilot project, and then we could expand it in a specific context that could be, reasonably speaking, of 300 trucks in order to get to $100 million, and then we could have a potential of more than 800 when we get to grow in our escalation abroad. Our capex, it is going to be distributed as follows. So we have $2,000 million in research, design, and others. So here we have $2 million. Then with the electric lines, we are going to have $400 million, and then with the terminal trucks, which is going to have the highest capex investment, which is going to be 11,500 million of US dollars. Now, in this figure, you can see what we are going to be working with and what the legal aspect of this would be like, which is going to enable us to continue working in the negotiation with suppliers, not only for the machineries, but also for the maintenance, and also in order to assess what the post-sale management is going to be like, and also to assess the specific debt scheme that we are going to follow. Here we have some indicators, some financial indicators. Here we have the TIR project and the investments and how attractive this project is. The cycle life of this project would last up to 7 years. And this is a project that is going to be a long-term project, so we can actually manage to have the reposition of it or the renovation of it, and we hope to have some renovation in a 7-year term. And now the timeline that we have for its implementation. Here you can see in the left side of this screen, here initially we have the concept note, and here we are going to have the benchmark, and we are going to set what the baseline is going to be in order to set what the specific risks are going to be in order to manage to have an outstanding project. And in the first quarter 2024, we're going to have the financial closure, and here we're going to get to work with a specific firm, and this is going to be the first project off-taker, and from then on we are going to start deploying the specific project. So we are going to have the whole engineering part of it, permits, the environmental permits and all of it, and having in mind the solar portion of the project. And here we're going to be working with UDME, and then we'll start with the implementation of this pilot project by January 2025. And then on the bottom part, we have the financial scheme that we have. So what we're requesting is the first 1% that we need to have by grant, and we want to have a grant scheme, and after that, after we have the off-taker and we start with the deployment of the pilot project, we want to switch it in comparison to the pilot project. Maybe it is not going to be 50 but 38 or 60, and in that sense we are going to move on with that engineering aspect, and we are going to move it on up to its implementation, and we are going to have 25% in equity and 75% in debt. So the invitation is for you to invest in this project. This is an innovative, sustainable project that has a great scalability projection, not only for our country, but also with our neighboring countries. And we're offering you with our expertise and with everything that we've gained in this sector. We have more than 50 years of experience, and we know how to work with these specific kind of projects. So this is an invitation for you to be part of this project. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to thank Cesar and Juan Pablo. With that, we finish the presentation of the different proponents. We would like to thank each of them for sharing their projects, and we would love to invite each of the participants and each of the attendees joining us online and in person here to be part of these projects in order to channel all of the funding investments that we could have in order to impact the climate as much as we need. And now we're going to have our second and last panel for the session today, which is going to assess the climate impacts that we have as of today. For that, we are going to have Alejandro Vera coming from Asobancaria, Mr. Gomez coming from the business scenario from Financiera Nacional, and Maria Jose Naranjo, Vice President of Bancoldex. For this panel, we are going to have Margarita Casas as the leader or moderator of the panel. Thank you very much. Okay, in the meantime, while our panelists get to the stage, I'd like to ask you for a round of applause for all of the proponents that presented us with the projects today. They did an amazing job in their presentation and in their initiatives, and I think that we're all now excited and thrilled to fund these projects. If I could, trust me, I would fund each of these projects. And as you knew, this was the most important part of today's session, but this is going to be, let's say, the cherry on top for today's session. This panel is going to be the cherry on top for today's session. All right, I'd like to start by presenting the panelists that are joining us for this second panel. First of all, we have Maria Jose Naranjo. She's the Deputy President for the Corporate Strategy in Bancoldex. She's been working there for more than 20 years in everything that has to do with strategies of development, and she's got a key leading role in this entity, and she's devoted to transform their initiatives and their strategy in order to highly impact the SDGs and Colombia's behavior. And here we have some specific strategies that are very important within Bancoldex. We also have Alejandro Vera. He's the technical deputy president in Asobancaria. He's got his training in economy, and he was an advisor for many different financial institutions, and he's also a professor at different universities in Colombia. And we also have Francisco Javier Gomez Velez, who's the deputy president of negotiation development and financial innovation in the national sector. And from this office, he is supporting many infrastructure plans. For the last years, he's been working on strategies in order to work with the green sustainability. And I'm also happy to mention that these three entities that are joining us today, and three representations, have been key in the development of what we've done in the last two cycles of CFA. So thank you very much for that. So with that, I'd like to get started by asking Maria Jose and Francisco a question. And in that sense, I'd like you to tell us what this climate crisis has represented for your organizations. We all know the different impacts that this crisis has, and of course, how has this transformed our strategy, our operations, our products, our services, and so on. So for your specific organizations, what has it mean? What has been the meaning of this crisis? Morning, and thank you very much for your very kind invitation. And I'd like to also greet my co-panelists. I think that this crisis represents a huge challenge, a huge opportunity in terms of the challenges that we need to tackle, but we also need to work with our financial institutions, because we need to train them, and we also need to consolidate, and we need to set what the whole initiative is going to be like. And we have that because of, let's say, changing the mindset that we have and changing the conversations that we're holding nowadays. And I think that this conversation is going to be elevated, and it is going to be connected to the board with the board of directors and the different stakeholders that are gravitating this issue. And today I can say that we do have a strategy of sustainable development that is composed of different parts. So that is comprised of, let's say, of the corporate governance, and here the governing board. It is very important for us to continue implementing the changes or the adjustments that we need to have in the specific and correct scenarios, specifically with the key stakeholders. And for example, in this steering committee or this governing board, so we are going to meet up every once in a while, every 2 to 3 weeks, and that's what we're doing at the corporate level. And then we're going to proceed with with all the reports that need to be delivered, and we try to be very strict in terms of the information management that we have, because we need to collect all of this information coming from our customers, and in terms to design the different projects that we design. On the other hand, we need to have a specific conversation together with our portfolio. So here, and Francisco, you can let us know a bit more this, but with each of our funders, the conversations continue to be very difficult, because most of the times they ask us to have better procedures, best practices, and they need us to be more and more complete. So we need to collect a lot of information from our customers, from the people that we work with, so we can have a very robust portfolio for our donors to be at ease and to be assured that our green bonds are going to be properly invested, as you said it yesterday and today. And of course, we need to actually customize the projects for our customers. What do they need in terms of adaptability? For example, for the micro companies, they need to be understood as an end user financial or funding institution. This is something that we have, for example, in most of the remote areas, and for example, because it is them that they need to actually adapt to the climate change. They need to adapt not in terms of their operations only, but also in the way that they are going to reach the financial institutions. And the third layer of our strategy is called efficiency, and everything that happens within the bank in order to be a more responsible an accountable institution and a more sustainable institution. So we have the SADAS system, which is the system that we're going to use in order to tackle the environmental risks. We need to have the correct or proper professionals, so we need to have a lot of training. And on the other hand, we need to have the efficiency, because we want to decrease the carbon footprint, and we all want to be, as officers, we want to be accountable in terms of what we do on a daily basis. So we don't use our car as much as we used to in order to get to our facility, for example. So I'd say that this is an opportunity, but it is also a specific need that we need to tackle, because our bank needs to have all these a structure that is going to be fully implemented within itself. Francisco, I don't know what to say after what Isabel has said. Yes, we're development banks, both of us, but I'm going to, let's say that we do have the same scheme, and everything that Maria Jose has said is pretty much the same that we have in terms of for financial institution. But I'm going to actually focus on the second aspect. Actually, we're part of a financial group or funding group, which I don't know if if you are all familiar, or if you're all aware of what we have here, which is the Bicentenario program. And in this kind of program, most of the relevant banks and financial institutions are going to be there. For example, Bancoldex, Finagro, and Financiera de Desarrollo Nacional, and some other banks. So we are in line with the same structure, in as much as Maria Jose has already mentioned it. But in terms of Financiera, which is a specialized bank that is focused on infrastructure, for us it's a little bit more complex, because we are called to enable the whole structure for all the different sectors that are working here through the different banks or through the different financial institutions. So one of the biggest challenges that we face has to do with the structuring of these different projects and how we can actually expand on those projects for the alignment of the different situations that we're having as of today in terms of decarbonization and in terms of the resilience in everything that has to do with climate change. And now, if I move on to the core of our operation, which is the roads in our country, here we have, let's say, an inconformity 2%. And you know what happened with the Villavicencio road, and we have been working on this because for us the most important asset that we work with is to how to manage information, how to elevate the levels of knowledge, and how can we use that information in the national road infrastructure. And in that sense, we have a huge challenge ahead. We started to work with WT, which is something that Volti people talked about. And here we started to map out what we have in our road infrastructure. So what we have as of today, 73% of this is in terms of roads, and then the remaining 17% has to do with the financial mitigation in order to work with electric buses or electric transport, specifically for the big cargo cars or big transportation cars. And this is a specific methodology that is being worldwide worked around, and we have found that in 3 to 4 different projects that we have, they would disappear up to 2030, which is something that has entailed or that has made us to work this around very carefully. And by nature, we know and we're working on the environmental aspects with a specific with some specific governing boards, which is something that we're working with the whole Bicentenario group. But the issue here is how we are going to work with those metrics and how we are going to protect our portfolio and how can we move forward or we move on to these impacts that we want to cause worldwide. So let's say that that's what I can say right now, but the rest of it, just like Maria Jose said, is in the same line that we have in our institution. And I think that in Finagro, Findeter as well is very important. And I would say that the one that might be behind in terms of the governance infrastructure could be Banco Agrario or the agricultural bank, but I think that, but I'm not that aware of that situation. Here, I'd like to highlight the importance of the information management for you, because I think that that comes hand in hand with the activities that we have developed in the last 2 months, because you were the ones that were actually asking, or they were the ones that were asking the difficult questions. And it was not out of nowhere, but that's the kind of information that they need in order to actually invest and to ensure that these projects are in line with the objectives that you have. So Alejandro, these changes that you have is something that you see generalized in the whole sector. Are they moving in the same direction, or are you creating new products that are going to be useful in order to fund this kind of projects, or what's going on in the sector? Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers and my fellow panelists. I'm very pleased to join you this morning. But let's say that the short answer is yes. There is a fundamental change, and this change happens because we're sitting here. That's as simple as that. That means that all of these climate change issues are a priority. We know that as a sector we want to work or we want to contribute with the mitigation in this climate change agenda. And that means that we need to invest with at least 2 points of our GDP. And that means that that's the point, or that's the aspect where we are called upon to contribute with our actions. If we don't want to actually pay for those expenses that are going to amount to 8 points in our GDP. So in clear, let's say with very simple math, we can tell how important it is to move forward in this aspect. And what we've done as a group, and actually I have 2 of the chief, let's say, officers. I have 37 bosses, as to speak, and these are 2 of them. So here we have, let's say, our flagship project is the Green Protocol, which is a protocol that got started 11 years ago, and it is an initiative that we have used in order to promote those projects that are climate-based or climate-based projects or green projects, and how can we move forward with these, or how can we leverage our operations with these green projects. And I think that this initiated a change in our mindset, because this actually helped us out to see, has helped us out to see how more and more key players are being introduced in this aspect. And with that, we have drafted 4 specific lines of work. First one, for example, work with green solutions, and second one, the implementation of the risk management system, which is SADAS, and then the eco-efficiency system and everything that has to do with the reports, and then with the management of the climate change. And those 4 lines have allowed us to reach some specific outcomes that I think are important to highlight, because sometimes we forgot to, and it is important to actually to highlight their importance, because it shows that we are deeply committed to these ends. For example, our green portfolio amounts to 18.7 million of Colombian pesos. Of course, that's a very low amount in comparison to the 500 billion amount that we have here, but it was an interesting increase, the one that we have in the last years. And on top of that, we have 7 different institutions that work with these green bonds, or these green initiatives, which are something to be highlighted, and they are looking for ways in order to fund their operations. And then we have 11 institutions that are managing their environmental risks, and 13 institutions that have implemented this environmental risk system. So we have moved forward in terms of those objectives that we set 11 years ago. And of course, it is very important to balance everything out and to say that there's still plenty to be done. There is still work ahead. And this is important to have in mind if we want to continue moving forward. First of all, we have a specific goal that is set for 2025, which seems to be very far-fetched, but not so much, because it's just a year and a half away from now. And the idea is to use these green protocol initiatives and to keep on working with the remaining entities that haven't introduced these green protocols within their operations. What are we missing? What else are we missing? We want to implement this green portfolio, because yes, it's grown, but it continues to be quite marginal in terms of the total portfolio. So when you check on these figures that we have, we want to have 40 billion of Colombian pesos in our structure, and using the economy Medon, the taxonomy that it was launched by the superintendents. And we are committed to fund 40% of these aims to 2030. And in order to do so, we're still missing, or we still have to work on the capacities that we need to have within our institutions in terms of this regenerative economy and in terms of the adaptation thanks to the different ecosystems, and now also in the energy transitions, among some others. So somehow there's still plenty of things to be done, but we can see that there is a switch in the priorities that we have, and we can see how this mindset has continuously changed, and it is pushing them forward. And with this, I'd like to conclude. There is also important to mention an important challenge to have some bankable projects that are going to be taken beyond. This is important to have in mind. I repeat myself a lot, but I'm not going to get tired of doing so, because they're using the public resources. So we are not going to actually waste this money, but we need to be financially accountable. And in that sense, by collecting different projects that has a specific financial closure, it is going to be useful for them, and it is important that they're bankable. And that happens because, first of all, we identify the projects, we accelerate those projects, and that happens as well because we're actually finding the alternative financial or funding alternatives, because this banking possibility is going to help the whole project, all the projects, to diminish the risks. And here we have to have some discount systems, and we also need to have some guaranteed lines, actually the ones that are subsidized, and so on. And another challenge that we have as a country, but I think that we're moving in the right direction.
So no doubt we need to support each other to be able to have to multiply these resources as well. So Maria Jose So related to Alejandro, related to projects or something, what is Bancoldes doing so about this solicitudes related to finance or these quality procedures as well? So we see every single time more corporate awareness as well. So because it's really important as well, and it's not in vain. This room is full of actors in this case. If you're seeing with the pyramid with a really important base related to this having a company, my pyme, small medium companies as well. So there's gonna be some solitudes related to amount and quantity, and we'll see that Francisco knows very well as the VIP, the projects, the finance, which are huge as well. When there are some syndicates as well, some more complex syndicates and small ones as well. So this is just like a triangle. For example, us like to be we are really focused in the middle and lower as well. So I repeat, the most important part is the quantity of initiatives, and it's working right. So that we are seeing interested in finance as well. So what we see it was very relevant as well. What Alejandro was saying, he was suggested to the credit as well, and it discredit things as well. With the structure and lines as well, with some subsidies as well. And in the bank, we have done a really huge effort to design awareness and to rely, and eventually, and the quality and quantity every single time is important. And the ecosystems, entrepreneurs, and the public banking as well to be aware to face these needs. And it's gonna be what Alejo was saying as well, the need to be more traditional players in this ecosystem, like the fintech, for example. And one called this OCMs related to those and entrepreneurial ones to have better capabilities to have to access to a room in this case in order to work with these kind of international players as well. In order to work about the to improve the suggested the subject the guy of person who arrives to our entities and responsibility and as participants and ecosystems as well, and hopefully to be able to invite and to include non-traditional players in this case to be able to work with this evaluation as well, not to generate a better impact, to be aware of the companies that is gonna worth it related to investment procedures and projects and qualities that we have and we've had mentioned before. And finally, because the good news there are resources as well. So you cannot imagine, for example, our vice president. We say, "What would do you want?" I get because there is on funds as well. What do you want? What do you want? I have enough money. Whether is the project was gonna be in this case of things as well with the bank as well. We're gonna be able to share a risk with this. The first bank first speaks founded to have the challenge in order to have these motivational partners as well, VIP like yours as well, in order to write, in order to work on every single sector. That is the good news. We need to place it as well. Very good. So there are too many of them, of course, and well, very good. I guess it's pretty clear. Some resources we have resources. What we need is to connect these projects with the resources and to assure their these credit subjects as well. So, Francisco, what are you watching on these projects? For example, that you have these environmental impacts and positive ones. And I was saying with the in order to deliver, which is the behavior of these projects. with these perspectives as well, because the financial statement hadn't seen, because in the business model, and as a VP is not like the VP, because we need to enable the infrastructure for precisely all that amount of money house could have it, because I don't have it. Because when you talk about this money, you place some standards, very high standards as well. They I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those kind of things as well. But I've been moving forward as well, and the play is in order to work with the decarbonization process or something. The global is represented in the forestal part as well. In this way as well, because of the innovation side, or we have been working as well in order to work with this infrastructure forestal part as well, and we have been facing this cool absorption, because the greenhouse effect as well in the scheme as well, because it has constituted a vehicle as well, like Luxembourg as well, with this kind of 3 or 4 participants around the world was gonna take us to have this first alternative, because it was one of the owners moving ahead as well. And secondly, they have been doing this week as well, because we have been part of the national fund as well. It's an invitation they were doing at this moment by the bid, and the VDN as well is going to be sitting in there facing this founding in order to develop infrastructure in the Amazonia as well. So enabling this needed infrastructure for definitely all of us, all of the public services and everything within the communities, we have moved ahead as well. Pretty cool, very great. So we're gonna take touch base related to something that I was saying, with this need to combine resources, as Claudia was saying about it. So what should we do to achieve to combine resources, to combine players from different sectors, from different sizes as well, and that they offer alternatives, interesting alternatives in order to handle a real risk with the projects as well. And the combination of knowledge as well. And clearly, when you see, for example, the strategy or mitigation of human change as well, because they have been many sectors as well, which is going to appear as well, and is required. We need wild resources as well in order to be able to work, to leverage more things that we know will be, and the final part as well, the combined financing as well, related to the finance sector as well. We do believe it's really important to develop and to innovate as well, to generate proposals. The sector we have been saying financial as well, to indicators based on the development resources as well, of course, the greenhouses, bonuses as well, the portfolios to ACG as well, or to ACG as well. But to all of that, we need to include all the rediscount topic as well. We need to work the guarantees lines as well, from the guarantees as well, and working to a pandemic, to the heritage superior, and to develop as well some money in order to work how it works. And the example is an idea that we were working on the President of the Republic as well. That because they gave us the idea, so we were looking to finance some energy transition topics related to parts of mechanism when you join with the mining ministry and with the rediscount networks with related to trade clerks and micro businesses as well, with the Caribbean coast as well, and with some more members of the guilds as well, Bancolombia, Banco Bogotá, and Bancamia as well. What they're looking for is to call those people and to have these kind of things, for example, in the fridge. For those fridges, for example, refrigerators, the energy they were spending and financing because of those shop owners as well, and to finance solar panels as well. And these kind of things with the banking, because they have the subsidy. That is something that we launch as well with these 4 or 5 cases to go deepen as well to enhance this kind of leverage as well. And the same with these tools as well that the blended have as well. So just on a study of credit. So we have a double impact. So by one side, finance the energy transition, the fair energy transition that we talked about too much, and generally with the things as well to the pay energy of the 12 million that you're gonna pay, and is gonna be able to do so. And the blended finance is just a way that allows these projects as well that they have an idea, just a preconception, an idea that is going to be with the project. So you say, well, it's going to be an idea from the president as well, thinking about that in the cloud as well. When you stop scratching and you start getting downloaded as well, so you say it makes sense and it works, of course, and it has a double impact as well because we're creating these kind of things, we're generating an impact within the communities, and besides, we're financing as well the energy transition, which is one of our objectives with the financial system as well. So, simply to say, as well as a matter of fact, as well, it's going to be a powerful thing as well, in order to allow us to leverage as well and to have some resources, and that allows us that projects that at the beginning they were apparently just a giant or would be doable concrete ones as well, and certainly there are too many of it, we can work together and along the geography because we saw too many projects as well. So all those kind of things can move forward and can carry on as well as a message we cannot forget. We cannot just leave aside that there are too many tools as well, public as well, because of the public as well, and to massify as well these kind of things that in the end is going to generate as well data, all the things and transition as well, and to leverage this kind of green bonuses as well. Fantastic example that is a huge hope because it's clear that we can do so according to the players as well. It's pretty interesting that the private industry and companies as well, they can some finance as well as we were saying, as we were given to leverage as these resources as well. Thank you very much for being with us here. Thank you very much on behalf of WCE3 and the CFA as well for the support that your organizations are the level personal. We're going to deliver with your process, and we're going to send you a huge applause as well. With this, we're gonna have the closing. We invite Claudia just for say goodbye. Thank you very much for every single proponents as well of the projects and our teams and WPC and E3 to become this possible and feasible as well, and every single ally that has been with us in all this process. So a huge round of applauses for every single one, for every single day they were listening to us and paying attention in this long morning, but it has been really interesting. To the ones who were connected as well, thank you very much. Um, in fact, I invite you guys to have this accelerated potential and really great entities, opportunities to become bigger as well among the governments and among every single person and every single stockholder that we are here, and mitigation as well. Single. Thank you very much, you all, and round of applauses here to everyone here. Okay.